Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Last Thursday.
Every Thursday.
Every Thursday.
Unless we're out of town.
You're right. Just like last week, we were out of town.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
So it's been a little while.
It has, actually, and it feels good to be back.
Definitely.
Feels on a lot of levels. Feels good to be back on Last Thursday stream. Feels lovely to be back in Washington.
For sure.
Yeah. Travel and all that.
Well, and man, a lot has happened in the last 2 weeks.
It really has. There's been a lot of change, a lot of transition, a lot of movement, excitement, all sorts of emotions.
It's like a whole new phase for us or something.
It really is. I feel like we've started a new book.
Yeah, right?
Like
not just a new chapter.
Not just a new chapter. I feel like we literally closed one of our books and we are beginning to write a new one. And that's how I've felt, actually. There's been like a raw freshness, kind of energy.
Right.
And yeah.
No, I agree with you.
Good. I'm glad you feel the same way.
That's what's up. So
yep.
We will get into all of that.
Yes, we
will.
Here
shortly.
Yes, we will.
But before we do, as always, if you want to support the channel, you can do so at patreon.com/thehealinghome. And speaking of patrons, thank you to all of the patrons.
Yes, thank you so much. We have a couple new patrons, but I'll go through the rest of the list just to let you guys know how much we really appreciate you. So Chance, Binna, Inland Sea, Liam, Amy, Miri and Hank, Jenny G, Erica, Moonlander/Dave, Mary, Logan, Lily, Debbie, and Natasha. Thank you so freaking much. Really, really appreciate all your support.
Yes, absolutely. And that'll do it for now.
Yeah.
For the intro slides, at least.
Yeah, there we go.
So let me see here. Change our setup. Yo.
Hey, full screen in it, baby.
That's right. Here we are.
All right.
Cool. I feel like the first thing I have to talk about is just the fact, before we get into everything else or whatever, that I'm still working through not feeling very well.
Yeah.
And so if my energy's a little low, that's the deal. And we did a stream yesterday on Interverse.
Yep.
And I was really feeling it in the beginning. And so it made me realize that, projecting ahead and thinking you should or ought to do something is kind of different than actually doing it. I think I managed just fine or whatever.
You did, yeah.
But yeah, in my body and in my mind, it was kind of dicey there for a second.
No, I get it. I mean, I know you were on the fence kind of, not all day, but you were on the fence right before we went on the stream, whether you should join or not.
Right.
I'm glad you did, because then you ended up kind of pushing through. You kind of turned a corner with it. You woke up feeling much better.
Yeah.
You sound better.
I feel much better today than I have over the last handful of days.
Yeah. So it's good. And yeah, I'm glad you pushed through and you were there.
For sure. So
yeah.
Thank you for your patience, guys. Anyway, so hello. If you're hanging out right now, thank you.
Yeah.
And let's get to the drinks, and then we can check the chat, and then we could get around to, what we've been up to the last couple weeks.
Yeah. So today, it's strawberry season, and our strawberries are starting to ripen, which is always really exciting. And so today we have lemon and orange kombucha with muddled strawberry.
Ooh.
Very excited for this one.
Yeah, same here.
I made this batch of kombucha before I left town, so it's actually been on its second ferment for well over almost about 2 weeks. So it's nice and fizzy, just
Sweet.
The way we like it.
Yes. Indeed.
Cheers. Oh.
Wow.
Whoa, that's
it's like
good.
magical.
Oh my God. The strawberry adds such a nice element to it.
Oh, yeah.
Damn. That's freaking good.
Mm-hmm. That's like one of the best ones so far.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite drinks so far.
Muddled strawberry.
Yeah.
That muddled is just the word you use if you just kind of like
it's
blend up something and toss it in there.
The act of like smashing it up.
Ah.
I mean, traditionally you would use like I think it's not. It's like a mallet.
It's not a muddler.
Yeah, it's a muddler. It's not a mallet. But they'll have like you can get wooden ones or whatever. If you go to like a fancy bar,
Is it kind of like a curved star looking thing?
No, it's kind of like a mortar and pestle.
Yeah.
The actual pestle that you kind of like smash things up with. It looks just it's very similar to that.
Gotcha.
And we don't have one of those, so I used a spoon.
Right
So
on.
you don't have to be fancy to muddle something in. But like one of the drinks that comes to mind that's muddled is like a mint julep. So they'll take like the actual mint leaves with the ice and like a simple syrup, and then muddle that together before they add any alcohol or whatever, and it just breaks up whatever you're muddling to kind of like bring out the flavor and stuff like that. So,
dude, that is a winner.
It's a winner. That's a winner, and it's really great. The strawberry is, I mean, you can't beat fresh strawberries from the garden because they're just like anything you have in the garden versus like conventionally store bought. It's yeah,
right.
So much better. So
after you picked the strawberries today, you said that it reminded you of my family.
Yes.
And then I said that's racist.
You did.
It's not, but
I know Mexicans love their strawberries.
We do. We love our strawberries.
And that's why I think of you, because your mom, I just think of your mom. I think of you liking them. And I just think of like her cheerfully having like strawberry things around.
I mentioned this before. I think it was on a Vibrant for Astro Herbs. It's probably last time, not Gemini, but Taurus. You know.
Oh yeah, because we talked about strawberry.
But that my ex used to work at Baskin Robbins.
Oh yeah.
And that she used to be able to guess what people would order, just straight up profiling them. And basically, she said that was one of the conclusions for sure, is that Mexican families, by and large, proportionally are going to order more strawberry ice cream than other families.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where I think black people was pralines and cream.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me too.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
Were white people vanilla? Or was it like chocolate or something?
I can't remember.
I could see it being like, or like peanut butter cup or something like that.
Right.
But who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's funny.
There's a couple others I remember. I'm not even going to go down this rabbit hole, but you get the idea.
Yeah, okay. We don't want to offend anyone tonight.
No, totally. Yeah, I know. The color's great. Someone's just mentioning in the chat. Right?
Oh, yeah, it is, isn't it? It's really nice.
Maybe.
Ooh, there you go. That looks good. Yeah.
Boom.
And you know what? So when you harvest fresh strawberries, when they're ripe, dude, they literally make like a popping sound. I mean, it's actually pretty incredible. It's like it's deeper than that. It's like a pop, like if you were to pop, like it has like a muted sound to it, like popping a bubble in like that, more like that. Like I was like, whoa. The ones that are really ripe have like a pop when you pull them from the actual stem. It's really cool. I don't know if anybody else out there has experienced that, but it was making me smile out there.
Once you pop.
Yeah, you can't stop. Not every single one did it. So it's just the ones that maybe that's just a symbol that they're super ripe and ready.
Right. Right.
It was just kind of cool to
That
hear
is
that.
cool.
That reminds me of what's the movie Hereditary. That's the girl.
Oh, yeah, right.
She has that thing with the clicking.
Totally. Yeah, wow. That would be a good one to talk about at some point. That was an epic movie when we saw it.
It was.
In theaters.
I loved that movie. I actually would be down for a rewatch of that because it's been a while.
Right.
And there's so many themes in there that are very relevant, and you can tell the filmmaker actually did research about specific themes in the movie before he made the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Which made it even creepier and more realistic and all the good things that you want in a horror film.
I just remember my hands were like noticeably clammy during certain scenes, which I mean, I rarely ever feel that way watching a film, watching a movie. You know, but it got me good. There was a couple scenes that really got me good. I'm like, oh my God, I'm like feeling like physical effects from watching this thing. Yeah. It was so much better than I expected. I don't know what I expected, but it was fantastic. So
yeah, and it was very ominous because we got out of the movie late, like midnight, and we rode our bikes to the theater. Yeah. And Saturn was like really bright in the sky. And we were just kind of like commenting on how I don't know. It like went along with the theme
There's
of the evening.
Saturnian themes for sure.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
And it just kind of like the ominous heaviness of Saturn, and whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. Let's see who's here, and then we can get into our little update section. And we have I guess we kind of have like 4 main sections today.
Yeah.
So just an FYI.
As usual, last Thursday's evolving, and we're adding things and changing things.
For sure. All right. So Flat Earth Hippies already calling Michelle with a 6.
Nice, I'll take it.
What's up, Liam? And then Michelle is here. Hello. I click the comments, guys, and our internet's so slow that it literally just doesn't even pop up.
Yeah,
it
sometimes
takes a second.
There's a delay, but
yeah, there's a delay.
we see you.
We do. So Liam, Michelle,
Howdy.
Matt, what's going on?
Howdy, Matt.
Pedro, what's up, dude?
What's up, Pedro?
Sarah G, howdy ho.
Hey, Sarah.
And then Polymathing, what's good?
Hey, Lou.
And Artist Seer, hello.
Hello, dearest Miri. Oh, you got to pick fresh blueberries today. Nice.
Sweet. That's awesome. Still standing.
Hey there. Bleeding Heart. I always recognize your photo there.
Ah, that's really cool. Yeah. Nice. So thank you guys for hanging.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Right on. Well, there's a lot to get around to. So personal updates first.
Sure.
And then we will roll the die as tradition, last Thursday tradition. And then we each have a topic. And then we've got a shout out section at the end. And then that'll be it. But yeah, wow. Well, I mean, we just both got in from being out of town.
Yes.
So I don't know if you want to work backwards.
Sure.
Or what you want to start with. But feel free. What's speaking to you?
Yeah, no, I think the out of town thing is good. Yeah, I was gone for 11 days, which is a long time. I've said that before. I think I said it on the last Thursday before that I left, but that's a long visit for me because typically when I go home, I usually aim for like 5 days for multiple reasons. But this go around, I was able to work it so that I could leave for a longer amount of time, which is cool. And there was a lot of work to be done while I was gone too. Work like helping my mom. It was for my brother's wedding. So we had a lot of stuff to do in terms of like cooking and baking and preparing and things like that. And so that was really, really cool. I will say this was one of the best visits back home I've had. And I think that there's a few reasons for it. And I think one of the reasons is because it was for my brother's wedding. So there was kind of like a buzz in the air with the family. And then I think that, I think it's just where I'm at personally, which really makes a difference too. And kind of being more of like a calm force going back home as opposed to years previous where I have been like more anxious about being home or the circumstances weren't as pleasant. The last time I went home, it was not for the most pleasant reasons. It was more for helping like on a darker level. So it was nice to be home for like a cheerful,
a family crisis sort of thing.
Yeah, it was sort of like a coming to family aid sort of thing. Whereas this time it was more about celebration and all that kind of stuff. But I think too, like there's in the Midwest in Milwaukee, I've always found that there's like there's just such a different energy there, and there's more of an anxiety, like heightened sort of thing that goes on there. And so it was nice to kind of go there with a calmer heart, calmer spirit, having like transmuted and changed a lot of those habits in my own way. I could feel the difference.
Right.
And I think it was just nice.
And then I obviously joined you at some point.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I think that's partly, I mean, we don't have to get into so many details or whatever, but my flight landed pretty early in the morning. And so
like 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah, 2:30 in the morning, different
Yeah.
time zone, all that kind of stuff. And then just have to say, love your folks, but our bed situation definitely personally wasn't ideal. I think we're really spoiled with our current setup right now.
Yeah, we are.
And so had a hard time sleeping, and then there was just stuff going on the whole entire time. So it was really funny. I feel like my body held things together up until the wedding, and then the day after the wedding is when things didn't really I just started not feeling very well.
Yeah, like you kind of started to have things set in. Like as usual, your body keeps up until it can't anymore. Especially when it's building up. There's build up to an event. Your body like kind of knows that you need. It needs to be at least good enough for you to be good for that event, and then typically you can crash after that.
Right.
And that's what happened.
Right.
So, which was kind of unfortunate. And I can see, like, in hindsight now, like, our planning on your arrival was not the wisest, I think. And so, next time when there's an event or we go travel or something, we could be a little more wise about how we pick the time and the day and whatever.
Right.
Because it was like you got in that late. So it was like 2:30 on Friday morning, and then Friday night, that evening, was my brother's rehearsal dinner.
Right.
So it was like you didn't have much time to rest, and then we were like right into social stuff.
Right.
And then the wedding was the next day.
Right.
And so it was just like boom, 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 lots of socializing and what have you. So I could see why it happened. And it's stressful to travel and be in a different place.
Totally. And we can circle and weave throughout all of this stuff, everything. But before you left to Milwaukee, we ended up putting our cat Carl down.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
Yeah. So we put him down. He was 18 years old. He was my buddy for a good long while, So when I got him, he was probably less than a year old, And so literally we put him down the day before you left.
Yeah, like
kind of all of a sudden, but we kind of saw it coming too, sort of thing.
Yeah, we saw it coming, but it was still unexpected because it was like, I don't know, we had just finished eating lunch and it was like 2 in the afternoon. And it's funny because we had been having conversations about this because we were having our good friend come and stay at the house while we were gone, and we were just thinking like, oh man, that would be a shame if she were to have to deal with something or whatever. And so we were kind of having the conversations of what will that look like? And, okay, we'll just wait it out and this and that. And it was one of those kind of like divine things too, because we were sitting with him and he had been declining. He stopped eating for about 5 days. And, I knew that obviously that was wrong. And then he started eating again and he was better for about 2 days. And then he kind of fell off again.
Right.
And so I remember when we were talking about it and we were like, whoa, what are we going to have to do, or what should we do? And I literally asked him for a sign. I said, all right, dude, give us a sign if you're ready to go, and then we both went to the bathroom and came back. And then Mario, you were like, yeah, it's time.
Right.
Because he was doing like, he seemed to lose his equilibrium. Like he lost his equilibrium to the point where I think the reason he wasn't eating was because he was dizzy and he had like vertigo or something, because he would go to his food bowl and like get food in his mouth and then he would like kind of fall over. He would like stumble.
Yeah.
And he dropped food out of his mouth, and I knew he was hungry. Like he wanted to eat, but his body just wasn't letting him.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I know we did the right thing, but boy, it was hard.
Yeah, the final sign, by the way, was his eyes started twitching involuntarily.
Yeah.
And if you look into it, it could be a number of different issues, inner ear stuff and tumors and all sorts of different things. And already by that point, he had lost a lot of weight. And then sure enough, when we took him in, he was only 5 pounds.
Yeah, which was sad. It was really sad.
She said between 5 and 6 pounds. And
Yeah.
so his just quality of life really wasn't what it used to be and all of that. And so we just made that call. And it does feel like it was the appropriate time and that it was the right decision and all that kind of stuff. But man, I mean, we talked about potentially putting him down. We hadn't even discussed that up until that day.
No.
Because we always thought that he was going to go naturally.
Right.
But then circumstances change when you actually see them suffering and not really even being able to like sleep properly, and they're not purring anymore and all that other kind of stuff. So, and we know, he's a special needs guy. So he had a lot of different things kind of going on, stuff that had been lingering for years that was chronic and was not going to go away under any circumstances, I don't think. You've tried everything, with him, and we know what Western medicine and what a vet is going to do. And we don't agree with a lot of their techniques. And so we decided to not pursue some of those options because they're not even really, they don't really heal. And so a lot of what they would have done to him would have just, shut off certain things, but it wouldn't have addressed anything. There would have been no addressing of the root cause of any of this stuff.
Right.
And so anyway, so I think that that's partly too. It was just like the whole thing of like, he transitioned and then we buried him with not expecting it. It was such an odd day just
Oh.
because we were so busy too, because you were about to go out of town.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, you left, drove you to the airport, came back. And then it's like, wow, it's really quiet around here. And then being around here and doing my thing for a few days and then leading up to the trip, I kind of feel like my body was still just mentally prepared to do all of this stuff. And then post the wedding, it was like, okay, cool. Now your body can actually like relax and you can let some of this energy sort of flow, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I still think, man, I mean, it makes so much more sense. Every single time I've felt under the weather, it has always been circumstantial and it's always been related to emotional movements or stress. It's never been anything else. Like for the last, like, I don't know how many years, 7 years or something. I've noticed that. Maybe something will happen once every couple of years. The last time this happened was when we finished moving in here.
Yeah, that's when you got really sick.
Yeah, I got sick because we were balls to the wall cleaning the old place and moving over here, and there's like a million things to do, and we're moving across states and, all this other stuff.
Yeah, it was a big move. It was a big move.
Yeah, it wasn't like an inner city sort of move.
Well, no, and we had been the house we moved out of, we were in for like 6 years. So
Right.
anyone who's been in a house for a long time knows that,
Oh my God.
you accumulate things and you whatever, all the stuff. So
When I say across states, it's
Yeah.
not like Oregon and Washington are that
I was
far
gonna
apart
say.
or whatever. But, there
there's a change, a big change. I mean, we left the city and went to the wilderness. So,
right.
that's like, it's not like we're in the deep wilderness or anything, but it's definitely a change of scenery in the best of ways, so it was just a really big move for us. And we were anticipating it for so long.
Right.
We had wanted to move for so long, and then we finally found the place after looking for like a year, so there was so much built up in it. And so, yeah, it's no wonder you kind of fell to the stress of it.
So if people ever get sick, they should really just look at what is going on in their life.
Yeah.
Don't just assume, oh man, I got something from somebody
Yeah.
and something passed over and whatever sort of thing. It's like it's probably more so related to, your lifestyle at that moment. What were you doing? Were you preoccupied or stressed out or super busy or slammed or whatever?
Right.
Or did you go through some emotional event?
Yeah, which you did.
Which I did, yeah.
And I really liked, one of the nights we were talking on the phone, you brought up how, you had Carl for so long, and that having him gone and then having me gone was your realization of like, oh, wow, like this is the first time I've actually had like straight up alone time.
Right.
In like almost 18 years. Because
Right.
whether or not, you were living with roommates or you're living on your own, you always had Carl.
Right.
And so I think that was like a big kind of thing that you probably internalized and didn't, maybe
Oh yeah.
like that was part of the process as well and everything else. And you gave me really good advice, or you said something to me when we were on our way to the airport that really helped me, process it a little bit. Cause, I would always say with Carl, oh man, when he goes, I don't know how I'm going to live. Like, not like I was going to die, but I don't know how I'll be able to go on. Cause I could never, I couldn't imagine my life without him kind of feeling. That's how deep my love for that cat was. And you said to me, well, you're doing it right now.
Right.
And that so helped me. And it just helped me right now to like not cry. But because it's true, you have to keep going. You just have to keep going. And the comfort that I've had is that Carl wouldn't want us to be sad. He would want us to be ourselves and keep going and keep doing the things that we were wanting to do and what we've been working on.
Yeah.
And that's what's been, keeping me going for sure, and knowing that he's in peace. And also, he went really peacefully, given the circumstance. And I wasn't sure how it was going to go, because personally, whenever I've lost a pet, I either wasn't living at home anymore, or I was too young, to the point where like my dad didn't want me to see it happen at the vet or whatever. So this was actually the first time I actually witnessed it happening. Like,
Same.
and so I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, how's it going to go? Do they feel pain? What's the deal? And actually, he went so peacefully.
He did.
And he did. He always had this thing where he would, when he was really relaxed, he would stretch out his arms and he would like grip his paw like that. Like
that was his move.
That was his move. And he was a gripper, right? And it was the sweetest thing, because they gave him like a sedative, and then they gave him the final shot, and he outstretched his arm, and he took like a really long deep breath, and he exhaled, and as he was exhaling, he gripped his paw, and that was like the end. That was
his final moment.
And I swear I felt his soul leave, and it was just like, oh my goodness, we'll meet again.
Yeah.
And that's all I could think to say to him was, we'll meet again, and, go north. Go north, my sweet boy. And safe travels. So, yeah, he's still here, though. I feel him, and it feels good to be able to honor him in the ways we already have. So.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I know. Yeah, that was intense.
It was.
At the vet like that.
Yeah, but the vet actually was really, they were very sweet. And luckily there's a vet that's like not far from where we live. It's about 10 minutes away, in like one of the 15, maybe one of the small towns that's close to us has a vet, and they were really good. And, it just, yep. It was really great to have him. I'm grateful we had him as long as we did. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Same here. He had a really good run.
He did.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, there's so many things we could talk about with it, but that sums up our last couple of weeks.
Yeah, so it's been quite the couple of weeks, and that's why I say it feels like we're starting a new book entirely.
Yeah.
Because Carl was such a huge part of our lives, and he always will be. That's the thing that Mario's been reminding me too. It's like he's always going to be a part of you, and so it's just he's just not in the physical anymore. So
right. And he's our only pet, by the way.
Yeah, he is.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Just putting that out there. So it's not like we have like multiple cats and a dog and whatever. So he was just like, literally, it was like a little Trinity sort of situation here.
Yeah.
And I've said this before, but when you got with me, you got a 2-for-1 deal. So.
Oh, I totally did. I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lucky for it, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, we both, and I'm glad we're both on the same page. We typically are with a lot of things, but we're both on the same page of definitely wanting to wait until we get another animal. Who knows how long it'll be, but we both just know that for multiple reasons. Like, I don't believe in needing to get an animal, right after one passes, because I feel like that allows you to bypass the grieving process entirely, almost, because then you can almost like kind of avoid or whatever. But for us too, just with our lifestyle as well, not even to sound selfish, but sometimes, it's like to be able to not have that extra responsibility for us, I think there's going to be a lot of freedom there. And I think Carl even knows that for us. And I think that's part of his gift. I think that's part of the gift of it, part of the silver lining that both of us have acknowledged and have been talking about,
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, so there's been lots of little opportunities to meet up with people, to stay the night somewhere, to go out of town, whatever, that we've not taken over the years because he just requires so much attention.
Yeah.
Because we just everything from what we feed him to, his sort of treatments and stuff like that. Like, it just requires a lot of patience and all of that. And so I think it makes way more sense to give it, like, honestly, like a year or two,
Oh, yeah.
And then maybe start thinking about it
Maybe.
versus
Yeah.
saying like, I'm going to give it a year and then we're going to get something or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyways, but we'll see what happens with everything, but definitely having a little bit of I don't know, appreciating the newfound freedom too, in a way.
Yeah, yeah, and that being part of, like I said, the silver lining of it and all that stuff. And I think that that's part. I mean, I think also death is like our ultimate gift. I really believe that. I truly believe that. As hard as it can be, whether it's a pet or it's a loved one or it's your own death, it's like I think that that is one of our best gifts that we're given here in this realm, because there's so much that happens. I think there's so much that happens beyond this that we don't quite know. But I think that this realm here has some kind of, I don't like to use the word prison planet, but there is some kind of, chain sort of feeling here because it's physical too. We're in the 3D. So of course it's like we're heavier here. We are physical, there's material things and all that stuff. And so I think that, to celebrate it instead of only mourning it is really important to remember during these sorts of times too. So
because death is a rebirth.
Yeah.
So and being born is a symbolic death somewhere else.
Yep.
So it's all just part of the same sort of thing. So cycles. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's been a lot going on, but it feels good, and just taking it day by day too, because just with any kind of grieving process, there's something you see or something reminds you, and you get, things well up, and and also allowing myself, just from my own personal perspective, allowing myself to feel into that stuff when it comes and not trying to stuff it down. Like, for example, I had a super early flight when I left, and at one point on the flight, I was just overwhelmed by the emotion of it because it was so fresh, and I was just thinking about Carl, and oh my goodness, and I just made the decision. I put my hood up on my hoodie, and I put down the snack tray thing, and I just buried my head, and I allowed myself to cry. It's not like I was sobbing or anything, but I was like, I don't even care who's sitting next to me. I'm on a plane. I don't care what any of these people think.
Right.
I am not going to stop myself from feeling these emotions, because I know what happens if you do that and you try and stuff it down. You have to allow yourself to process it. And, and anyway, I feel like I feel like if I wouldn't have done that, I would have done it at some other point, but it would have been more extreme.
You have to let it flow.
Yeah. And so I have to say, once I did that, that was the last really deep, sorrowful cry that I had about it. I've had other moments where it bubbles up, but it wasn't like how it felt there, where it was just like, oh, this is intense. And I just have to allow it to, go through me. So.
Right.
Anyway, but all in all, yeah, it's been sad but beautiful at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before too with our dynamic. The way our lives have played out, we haven't either of us experienced that much death in our life.
It's true.
And I have a huge family.
Yeah.
So I've lost 3 grandparents, but it's almost just one of these things where it was so, I mean, each one had kind of a different circumstance or whatever. But the families are so large, so many people, so many aunts, so many uncles on both sides, that it was almost just my personal relationship with my grandparents wasn't as close as I think some other, you're probably closer to your grandparents, to your grandmas, as an example, than I was to my grandmas.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it's more of a tight-knit sort of thing. There's way fewer people.
Smaller family
sort of thing. And so, anyway, so long story short, all I'm trying to say is that, he's probably, in terms of actual, close proximity emotionally and everything else, he's probably the closest death I've ever had experienced before.
I would say the same thing. I've lost my grandpa, who wasn't actually my blood grandpa,
right.
The Grandpa Larry who you saw the photos of.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
he was my grandma's second husband, but he was way more of a grandfather to me than my actual grandpa was. And then I never even had a chance to meet my other grandpa because he died when my dad was really young, like 13. And so for me, he was probably one of the bigger ones. But other than that, it hasn't, luckily, knock on wood, whatever you want to do, it's like it hasn't really come up as much.
Right.
But we're getting to the age too where things start to,
Yeah, exactly.
That was one of the realizations on my trip too, is like both of my grandmas are 88 years old.
Right.
And this was the first time being home where the age is really, really showing, and both of them are quite, I guess stubborn is the word, but they're prideful. So, we had a barbecue at my mom's house the first Sunday I was there. And, my stepdad came over to them. We were all standing in a circle. And he goes, "Don't you ladies want to sit down?" And both my grandmas were like, "We're fine. I'm fine." And they're all like, they're old, and you could tell they're in pain, but they're too proud to take a seat. They want to stand up and do what they would do if they were younger. And so it's just really interesting to see it. But yeah, I mean, for their age though, I'll say they're both they both have very resilient souls and and just they're quite sharp, for their circumstances and their age, which I'm grateful for. So
totally.
Yeah.
And I'll say, kind of switching gears a little bit, but one of the highlights of the trip, and he's hanging in the chat, Tippy Canoe, Kyle, was getting to meet Kyle.
Yes.
And hanging out with him for an afternoon.
Yeah, it was freaking awesome.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah, it was fun. And we talked about it a little bit on Vibrant last night. But he said it, we like hit the ground running. It was almost like as soon as we walked up to their front porch, it was kind of like, felt like we've like been friends for a really long time and we're able to just talk, and it was very
chill and
comfortable and chill and nice, and we did achieve flow state. I feel like at one point, it was just like, it was really nice, and they cooked us a beautiful spread.
Totally.
And we shared wine together, and we got to meet Serena, his wife, more, and Davide, their son, and so that was really cool. Diddley, their dog, which is awesome. And so it just too, there's something so heartwarming to me that they live in my hometown.
Oh God, yeah.
And so there's something that is very sweet and comforting that comes from that too, knowing that. And Mario and I were actually talking about it last night, of just like, we can see ourselves going back to Milwaukee more because they're there. Not that we don't want to see my family, or that I wouldn't want to see my family, but there's like an extra incentive, I feel like now, in Milwaukee for a journey. So
yeah, totally.
Anyway,
honestly, more than anything, and I feel like I'm like harping on this now, but it just sucks that I wasn't feeling 100%.
Yeah,
but
you did good though.
It's the version I needed to be that day.
That's true.
It was the version Kyle needed to be the version of me that Kyle needed to be exposed to. But that's the only thing I would say personally that was kind of a bummer, but it is what it is. So
yeah, it was so chill though that
I know. But even just like in terms of, I don't know, just conversation and stuff like that, and just like your memory isn't exactly what it is normally and all that kind of stuff.
That's true.
So, but yeah, it's all good.
It was.
Yeah. So anyway, hello, Kyle.
Yeah, that was awesome. I'm glad we got to share that with everybody because, that's just what's been going on. So, and neither of us have been very vocal about it on social media. I kind of went back and forth about, doing a post about losing Carl and all that stuff. And for some reason I felt like, I don't know if I'm going to or not, and honor him in a different way than just posting him on social media. There's nothing wrong with doing that. And who knows, maybe I will, I don't know. But at least at the time, it didn't feel right. And so, but it feels right to talk about it now.
Right.
So anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's see what's going on in the chat, and then we can roll some dice.
Yeah.
Or a die. Rather.
Roll the die.
Cool. Alrighty, here. Thank you guys for your well wishes with everything.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Yeah. So Benna said she had some dreams about you last night.
Oh, really?
That's
Oh,
interesting.
good ones. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's good.
Oh, PK, what's up, dude? He's guessing Michelle a 3, a Mario a 3.
Ooh, a little tie,
We'll
huh?
see what happens.
Okay.
If that happens, we should just do our weaves at the same time. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, you would like that?
Yeah, let's try it.
Okay.
I like that.
What's up, my cherie? Nice to see you.
Hey, hey.
As always. Jason.
Oh, my mom, my aunt, and my grandma, and my aunts did a hula at the wedding. By the way,
That's right. That was really cool to see because I've always heard you. Well, you've shown me photos, and it's part of your guys' like sort of like thing.
Yeah, it was cool to see the three of them do it, and the fact that my grandma still can do it is pretty awesome.
Right.
Anyway.
Right. Oh, she was loving it.
Yeah, she was loving it.
Totally. So, Jason, what's good?
Howdy, Jason.
What's up, Gordy? Nice to see you,
Hey,
man.
Gordy.
And J-Lo is here. Hello, J-Lo.
Hey, J-Lo.
Liam, I like this prism planets because that's kind of even like one of the things, even just like the light prism or the light spectrum or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's like things are finite here in a way, and so that is part of the confinement, and it seems like things are finite in a way too that you can't go anywhere.
Right.
Right. We live in a closed sort of system.
Yep.
And so things are kind of like on lockdown here in a way, but I don't look at any of that stuff as being negative. To me, it's part of the dynamic of what I've recently read and have been talking about of universe A versus universe B.
Okay.
This plane versus the next plane over sort of thing.
Right.
And so things here, there's this finite sort of quality. So your body, is some people would say that's your there's like it's your meat suit that's kind of prison like, so you're only capable of doing so much. It requires things to keep going and everything else, and then you can get hit by a train or something, and then it's all you're all done for.
Right.
So the prison planet metaphor, I think there's actually positive aspects to it that symbolically make sense, but then I think that there are negative aspects to it, and you could take it to a really bad place.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
you can be very nihilistic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
Which is the folly of all of that, really.
totally. Right. So let's see here. I think we are all caught up.
All right.
With the chat. Nice. Awesome. Sweet. You should roll first, baby.
Oh, that's interesting.
Go ahead.
Wow. Okay. I just have to, because anytime when there's dreams that are being shared, I do like to hear. So Benna says there were 4 dreams, each of them. Michelle was in a farmhouse at the top of a mountain. People were taking stuff up there. And then I like this detail. The first dream was Rachel Sunseed trying to move a truckload container of berries up the mountain to give to Michelle. Interesting. I don't know if you were in the beginning of the show, but strawberries. I harvested strawberries today, and strawberries are in our drink right now. So anyway, thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. I like it.
Nice.
All right. So we're going to roll the die. Let's see. Okay. So Hank said a 6.
PK said 3 and 3.
PK said 3 and 3.
Oh, yeah. If anybody wants to guess the roll number.
Roll. Liam had one too up top. I don't remember what it was, but I did see that Liam had a guess as well. So I'll give it just a second. But
right.
Big money. Roll the die.
Let's see. Should I guess? For some reason, 4 just came up to me. So I'm thinking maybe you'll get a 4 or I'll get a 4.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Oh, a 6.
6.
Dude, Hank, what is up, dude?
Nice. That's pretty good, dude.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
He has guessed correctly. Now I think that's probably like the 3rd or 4th time that he's guessed correctly.
Yeah, that's pretty solid.
That's pretty freaking awesome. Flat Earth hippie. Got that flat Earth hippie juju.
5.
Oh, and a 5. All right.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So, I've got some stuff over here. I'll grab my notes. But, in the tradition or in the given everything that we just talked about, I thought, and what kept coming to me was I want to talk about herbs and plants for loss and grief.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Because I just keeping it real, this is just what's been on our plate, as you guys all just heard our story about all this stuff. And so, yeah, this isn't the first time that I've ever experienced grief or loss of something. So, but when these times happen, it's really awesome to have some plant allies that you can lean on when you're trying to process things. Because what I've found with these kind of situations is it's okay to ask for help. And just like I was saying, it's okay to allow yourself to cry and to feel through stuff. And, sometimes you might not have somebody that you can talk to or whatever, but you can talk to the plants, and the plants will help you process things. And also, what some plants can do is actually help to bring up like stored things that you might be storing that could be connected to the grief, or even subconsciously that you're not aware of, maybe emotions or situations or people or places that are connected to whatever you're going through. The herbs can actually help you tap into that and bring it to the surface so that you can process it and then, move on a little bit more easily, because everybody grieves differently. And there's no set time for this stuff. Like you can't speed it up almost. It's just like you can't speed up nature. You can't bring on spring before spring is here with gardening or whatever. You have to wait. Sometimes you have to wait.
Right. Just to your point, by the way, I just have to say,
Yeah.
because it was one of the last things that I listened to before heading out to see you guys. So Kendrick Lamar, his last album, he it's popular to say I'm built different. That's kind of like a thing. It's like I'm built different. I'm built to be this badass, or I'm built to be this entertainer, or some, I don't know, whatever you think you're really good at or whatever. But he has a song where he says I grieve different. And like that's like one of the main lyrics behind the whole entire song. It
I like that.
is talking about how he grieves differently, and that's okay. And just like what you're saying.
Right.
And it's totally true. And that's one of the things I kind of realized as well, because I can't remember the last time I've had to grieve anything, really.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm more mature at this point. I understand it more than I think I used to understand it. And just like with anything, it's like the more you have to do something or end up doing something, the more you can kind of acknowledge the dynamic of things for what they really are, And so I think with the emotions, just real quick, a lot of people, they don't know what the emotions are. Like there's almost like there's a disconnect. And so, because it's mysterious, it's related to the cups. And it's related to water, and it's related to spirit. There's this endless sort of almost like spiraling whirlpool sort of aspect to your emotions.
Yeah.
This constant churning and churning and churning and movement and everything else. It's related to the oceans, the vastness. Just think about the vastness of the oceans. Think about the vastness of space, the cosmic ocean. And so I think the emotions for a lot of people, they suppress them because they don't realize that the emotions are very intimately tied, in my opinion, to just like the concepts of spirit itself, literally, and the idea that spirit might be another aspect of water. It could be the highest aspect of water, as an example.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that it's so closely related, our emotions, to the mysteries, that I think that mysteriousness, it turns people off from allowing it to flow. But when you understand that it's actually connected to all these things, I feel like I just understood it more this time, where I'm just kind of like, oh, like I get it. And I understand that allowing it to flow and embracing kind of the mystery of it in a way, but yet there's elements of it that I do understand and I can comprehend or whatever. But I just feel like that kind of helped me, I think, kind of like process some of everything, and also too, it's mysterious as well, because most oftentimes it's like the people are going to grieve the most when they lose someone. And so that to any person, that's very mysterious.
Yeah.
Where do they go? What happens? What does this mean? Will we meet again? What happens after death? Is there such a thing as heaven or the underworld, or what does that look like? Blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And so death is intimately tied to the mysteries and intimately tied to occultism. And our emotions are like a gateway to all of that stuff as well.
Yeah.
To me, I see it all very much as being like completely related. It even just reminds me right now of the death card, the Crowley death card. Death is at the bottom of the ocean,
Right.
corresponds with Scorpio.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, just wanted to kind of throw that all out there. Basically, is that I think a lot of people who suppress their emotions, they want to logically, rationally understand it. And
Right.
you only can to a certain extent. The rest of it has to be felt.
Exactly.
That's why we have these emotions. You know what I mean? And so yeah, so just wanted to just kind of put that out there.
No, those are great points, because when someone's they internalize their emotions, but they're trying to like make sense of something that's happening in their life logically, they typically find more strife, because they are unallowing themselves to feel the emotion, and they don't quite even understand that it's, grief isn't something that you can just logic your way out of or think your way out of, in my opinion. You can try and just stuff it down and not deal with it, but it's going to eventually affect you in some way that you might not even understand down the road, and it might be quicker than you thought. And it might be, a long time down the road. But yeah, I feel like that's part of the detriment of kind of like the, the more scientific mindset, or that we don't really matter,
Right,
we're
exactly.
insignificant, or
These are all just chemicals.
yeah, everything's a chemical reaction. And we talked about that because there was a family instance that came up where it was the excuse given for someone's behavior was a chemical imbalance. And that is seriously one of my biggest pet peeves, because that, in my opinion, I do not believe that is the case at all. It's an emotional issue. It's not chemicals in your brain. And that's a total allopathy, Western medicine. Oh, you're depressed? Oh, well, your chemicals in your brain are off. Here's this pill that will switch your chemicals or whatever.
What I'll say, just to clarify it from my perspective,
Yeah.
is that there is a real reaction. We're like walking alchemical labs.
Yeah, I get that.
So we have hormones. There are chemicals in us. There's elemental. There's all sorts of things happening. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there are things that are released and secreted when you're happy, when whatever, when you're sad, and so, or maybe preventing from a flow of certain things. If you're feeling down or whatever. So there always is like a spiritual, physical sort of back and forth sort of thing. But I know your problem, I think, and my problem with it is that people lean on that to excuse their self-destructive behavior or their bad behavior, and they want to blame the chemicals, and they don't want to change anything.
Yes, exactly.
That's the big thing, is that they don't want to change anything in their life. They don't want to change their patterns. They don't want to change their behaviors. They don't want to do it. They don't want to take personal responsibility. They want to take a pill.
Yeah.
That's going to address the chemicals. But how many people take this shit and it doesn't even work out for them?
And it makes things worse.
And it makes things worse.
Yeah, no, thank you for clarifying that, because you are right. There's things that happen that are released and stuff like that. But I think it's kind of when that excuse is given for somebody's bad behavior or their avoidance of dealing with a hard emotional situation, that to me is like a cop-out. And it's a cop-out to not have to deal with things, to not have to take personal responsibility, to not have to address something, that's the thing for me that really kind of like, that's my pet peeve with that kind of mentality. So,
right.
Yeah,
right,
I appreciate your clarification.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, how I kind of see it and all of that. So there is a correspondence with what is happening chemically, but just like you were saying, that's more of the scientific tradition way of looking at everything.
Yeah, it is of that. Like, isn't there something too with like, love, like there, it's love actually isn't like an emotional reaction. It's like literally chemicals in your brain firing off that you're feeling love or something.
Oh, I mean, that's, yeah, I
That's kind
mean,
of like the more scientism sort of outlook on things. So
yeah, everything is just, yeah, you're all just, your lifestyle, your choices, all these things. It's all just dependent on what's going on chemically in your brain. And a lot of people think that. Yeah.
right, and that's fine. So whatever, but um, you know, aside from that, what works way better with emotions are plants. And so that's why I wanted to talk about plants, because also though plants have certain constituents. They have certain things within them. If you I don't, you could call them chemicals or whatever, but it's more of constituents that can trigger reactions in your body or trigger certain organs in your body to start to produce things like serotonin or things that will relax you or calm you. They're just going to help your body to do what it naturally wants to do when you're going through something that is challenging or something where you're experiencing loss or grief. So I have talked about this herb so much, and so many people know that it's one of my favorites, but motherwort is always the first one that comes to mind. And a connection with Carl would be, I used to give motherwort to Carl for a number of reasons, but he had a heart murmur, and I found that when I gave him the motherwort, his heart seemed to come, his heartbeat and his heart rate came into balance when I gave him motherwort. And our nickname for motherwort for Carl was Mama Wart, because I was his mama. And so it's been very comforting to me to have motherwort right now because of that, because it reminds me of him. But motherwort is such a great heart remedy, specifically when you're going through grief, specifically when you're in so much grief that you feel as though you want the comfort of of your mother. And anybody, even if you don't have a good relationship with your mother, most people know like that warm feeling that can come from a motherly mother who embraces you and makes you feel calm and makes you feel warm and loved, and all those nice cozy things that comes from mother energy. That's what motherwort provides in plant form, in my opinion. And it's wonderful for anxiety that comes along with grief, specifically feelings of panic, panic attacks, just overly emotion. The emotions are just stirring so much so that it takes your breath away, kind of feeling. Motherwort can take that and just bring it down almost instantly, in my experience. Putting a dropper full under your tongue, give it a minute, and it usually really, you start to feel the calm sensations of this, and it really helps with like heart palpitations and stuff, which typically can come if you're experiencing anxiety or like from heart-wrenching emotions.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah, this one, I know you have a strong relationship with it.
Yeah, I do. And I've used it many a time for myself, but also for other people who, are going through a rough patch in life.
Right.
The second one that came to mind was rose. I've also talked about this for grief as well. A lot of people know it for grief, but what I find that rose does is it brings beauty and comfort to like an ugly quote unquote situation. And that's what I find it to be best for, because anyone who's ever smelled a rose or been in the presence of a rose, there is such a softness. There's a delicate feeling to it. There's that more of that Venus feminine mother energy that kind of comes from it, like divine mother, the great mother sort of energy. I feel as though there's the 5, which we've been having a 5 weave.
Yeah.
I think rose with its 5 petals, and then the 5 energy of Venus, it really helps us go through the process. Like if you look up the process of the grieving process, there's usually 5 steps.
Oh, 5 stages of grief.
5 stages of grief. And I think that employing rose for grieving helps you to start the process of these 5 processes, or the 5 steps, or whatever you want to call it. And it actually kind of like helps that to be more easeful. in my experience. And it also softens hard times. And anybody who's ever, touched a rose petal or whatever, the soft feeling of like the silkiness there, there's all of these things are in rose medicine, and whether that be a rose, rose water, rose petal essence, a rose elixir, rose tincture, whatever that might be, or literally just sitting with roses. And that's the other thing with all these plants, sitting with them can just bring you, calm sensations as well.
Right. And I mean, yeah, just the essence sort of angle with it, that, or just like, even just like writing it down and maybe having it be somewhere, I don't know what if somebody wanted to work with that, and let's just say they didn't have it around, what would be your recommendation on maybe how to tap into it or get in touch with it?
I would, if you didn't have rose around, I think, writing it down on a piece of paper, even like doing a meditation and envisioning a rose in your mind can be very helpful too, like for a meditation. And most everybody knows what a rose looks like, and so in your mind's eye, what does the rose look like, and kind of imagining that, even saying the word rose out loud in meditation, and invoking that in that way. And I mean, I find too that I think having a memory of rose can go further than a lot of people think, if you weren't able to get your hands on it somehow.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Hawthorn berry and the hawthorn tree are another wonderful remedy for grief. Many people know of this, who work with plants or who maybe know other people that work with plants, but this is known as a marriage tree. So there's a unity aspect to hawthorn. And so it is a heart remedy too. Back, years ago, I used to make my dad hawthorn berry capsules because he has high blood pressure. And he would take them, and he told me that when he took the capsules, it reduces blood pressure. So there's a whole theme with the heart and blood and the color red, even though our blood inside of us is blue. But you're getting my drift. A lot of these herbs here have connections to the heart, because that's where we feel a lot of loss and grief and things like that. And so hawthorn too is really great for self-love and the love of others. As I said, the unity, there's like a unity aspect with it being a marriage tree. So you can find a sense of unity during a time of separation. And I think that that's really very, very important when you're grieving the loss of something or someone.
Right. Rewind to the blood being blue.
Okay.
Blood inside of us is blue.
Yeah.
You think so?
Well, it's not oxygenated. That's the whole thing. Like, so when you look at your vein, your veins are typically blue.
Right.
Or is it that?
I mean, I don't know, but if your blood's pumping though, you get red.
Right, but I wonder if that's just like the peripheral, like on your skin, the surface of your skin.
Yeah,
is that heat? I don't know. I mean, that's always what.
I mean, I'm asking. Is this worded? I mean, I've heard this before, but I just want to know if you have like looked into it, or if you've read it recently or something like that.
I didn't read it recently, but I mean, that's what I've always heard or been told. So I could be wrong. That could be totally wrong.
I think it might be.
I'm open to it being wrong.
Yeah. That might be like I don't know if it's like an urban legend or something like that.
Oh, okay. It could be. If anyone out there knows, please.
Yeah. Because I find it. I think that would be kind of hard to believe personally, that it changes color like that immediately.
Oh, with the oxygen.
With the oxygen. Yeah.
That's just always what I've heard. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I'm inclined to think maybe not, but it might be something worth looking into.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the hawthorn helping you to mend a broken heart more easily. That's also one of the things that I find is really nice about it. There's
Right.
also a sweetness to hawthorn berry powder that I've always found pleasant, and I sometimes like to add it to when I make like medicine balls, or you can make your own like almost like medicine pills just from powder without putting them in a capsule. We talked about this in Vibrant last night, but mixing hawthorn with something like chocolate or cacao and honey, you can do that and make yourself little like medicine balls that are nice
Right. Right.
to take. Um, I really, really, really value elder during times of grief and loss for a lot of reasons. Elder is she's like a crone tree in my opinion. There is a element of death when it comes to elder. That's what it's usually associated with. There's association with the underworld, with traveling, between realms. Dream time comes up as a theme with elder as well. And it actually, there's so much protection that comes from elder. It's ruled by Saturn. It has also another thing, another connection to the blood, circulation, helping things to move. One of the wonderful allies that comes with elder, specifically the berries, is helping to move stagnation. And so what can happen when we are grieving or whatever, you can maybe find yourself unmotivated, or you're so overcome with these emotions that there's like a stagnation that might happen, whether that be physical, emotional, spiritual. And elder can kind of come in and really get things moving again in that sort of way. And there's something so beautiful about the elder wood has a very soft pith in the middle of it, and so you can hollow that out.
Right.
And then the stems are hollow of the elder wood, and so a lot of times, people traditionally would make flutes and things with elder. You can make whistles from elder, but one of the things with that the tubular shape is that it can allow you to communicate with the other side or other worlds more easily. That's like kind of one of the more symbolic spiritual aspects of it. So there's like this open channel of communication. So if you have lost somebody, and you're wanting to communicate with them a little bit more or more easily, elder can help you do that. It really, it allows you to see into darker spaces within yourself. And that's another thing too with grief, I think. And it illuminates things that could be hidden more deeply within inside of yourself. And so it's like when you're working with elder on that level, it's going to show you the things that you might be either hiding from yourself. It's going to show you the skeletons in your closet, which I think is another Saturnian connection there. The bones, like what's deep within your bones, elder kind of helps you to get into that and work with that energy a little bit more.
It kind of reminds me of almost like a hackstone, allowing you that hole, allowing you to pierce the veil and see the other side.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the same thing with the that elder stick. Yeah, being able to see through, pierce through maybe your conscious reality or something like that, and see deeper things, maybe more of the night side or root side of things.
Yeah, the night side.
Yeah.
Because it is, sometimes people associate it with a poison plant, because I don't find it to be, I don't ever really worry about taking too much elder, but sometimes you'll hear people talk about there's like a toxicity to it or something, which I don't really necessarily think that you should worry too much about that, but eating like the fresh berries or whatever can sometimes like upset someone's stomach, or if you were to like chew on the wood or something like that, that could maybe cause upset, but most people aren't doing that. But there's a long just folklore history with the elder. And if you want to know more about it, there's actually a video on my YouTube that Mario and I collaborated on a couple of years ago now. But it's just kind of goes through all of the folklore of the elder, and I think we did a really good job on that one.
Yeah. That's one of my favorites actually.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really well done, and I think together it was really nice. So
Definitely.
so okay, flower essences, which I do talk about quite a bit as well, and so flower essences to me are super valuable when you're working with grief and loss and trauma, any hard times, because you're basically kind of working with, they're very gentle, but they're very potent. And so they are like very much like homeopathic remedies where they're diluted to a high degree. So I feel like because of the dilution, like sometimes it's like the more they're diluted, the stronger they are, which sometimes seems counterintuitive. But it's the less is more sort of mentality with flower essences. And I've gotten a lot of relief from them. I find even making your own essence is the medicine is in the making, the process of making it too, because you're taking, it's more of like an involved process in the way that you're wanting to be more gentle with it. There's even like, there's practitioners that believe that you should not even touch the flower itself. So if you can somehow not touch the flower as you're putting it into the water, and I practice this. So like people even say like use leaves of the plant to like grab the flower to hold it. And I think that's more of an energetic thing. Like you're then not actually physically touching the flower. So you're not like interfering with that energetic maybe. And also sometimes like just literally snipping the flower, and allowing it to drop right into the water into the bowl you're using. Also even just plucking just flowers and not anything else, any other parts of the plant is another kind of practice that goes on with the making of flower essences. But if you want to learn more of that, I just highly recommend looking up videos online. You can find some good guides of how to make them and how to dilute them and how to store them correctly and things like that. So bleeding heart. And that's the still standing their photo.
Yeah, their avatar.
The avatar.
Yeah.
Bleeding heart is one of the essences that I've always turned to during a time of grieving or sadness. And then the name says it all, a bleeding heart.
Right.
You know, you have a bleeding heart. So that kind of implies there's an injury to the heart, or there's just like heartache, heartbreak. And it's such a gorgeous flower. And the way that it hangs from the stem, and it moves in the wind. And I find that flowers that move with the wind help to bring energy of flexibility. And I think that when you are grieving, you have to be flexible with yourself, or you should be flexible with yourself and not be so hard on yourself. If you're feeling emotions or whatever, you have to allow things to flow, and being flexible is very important with that. And so that's where my mind goes when I think about flowers that kind of have that hanging aspect. And bleeding heart is one of them. So what I've found with bleeding heart is that I've had the experience of taking one drop of a bleeding heart flower essence and being overwhelmed with emotion to the point where you just start crying. I've heard this happen with other people, not specifically with bleeding heart, but with other essences, where you take one drop and before you know it, things are coming up, like things are rising to the surface.
Right.
And that's the whole point of working with these essences, specifically with trauma. I know I've talked about this before, but there's something to be said about working with drop doses, even if it's not a flower essence, literally a tincture, just a tincture, a drop dose of a tincture can do the same thing. Even going as far as doing this with tea, making a tea for yourself and taking one sip. That's it. And that can have the same effect as doing these drop doses. And there's something so beautiful about it too, because it just reminds you of kind of the less is more, but also the the power of these plants and what they can offer, and just how potent they can be with just a little bit. Um, Having gratitude for the experience that you're going through. A bleeding heart's really great with that. This is all coming from my own personal experience, by the way, too. So I'm just sharing with you the experiences I've had working with these plants. But yeah, the having gratitude for the experience and the lessons that are coming from the loss is a really something very important that bleeding heart does. Also, just such a great ally for deep sadness and the feelings of a broken heart, like we were talking about. um the other remedy that I wanted to talk about is something I actually just took last night before we went on the Vibrant last night, because I was definitely feeling a little bit emotional before that stream. And this is the Two Spirit Medicinals, mutual friend of ours, Mario actually designed the labels of this woman's medicine. This is the Emotional Heart Ally.
It might be too small to focus, but
Either way,
there we go. Kind of.
almost. So Two Spirit Medicinals is run by
There
a
we
woman
go.
named Lori. She, I know her from the Portland area. She ran a shop for many years called Clary Sage Herbarium. That's how I met her. And she sold her shop a couple of years ago, and now this is her newest venture that she's been doing for the past like 2 or 3 years. But this Emotional Heart Ally is seriously such great medicine for any emotional times. All of her essences and medicine, I stand by it 100%, and I highly recommend it. I always recommend it to people that I'm working with on a consultation level. You name it. She has quite the ability when it comes to making medicine. She's very connected. She she does a really great job. She lives in Battleground, Washington, which isn't too far from us. But the thing I love about her medicines is that she's basically mixing tinctures with flower essences and gem essences. And so this one here is wonderful. And she has affirmations on each bottle. And so the affirmation for this one is I give gratitude. I give gratitude to have loved, as I know my heart is capable of healing and loving this way again. And so this one has just been such a strong ally for me for many instances, but it has been from while I've been going through all this stuff with Carl. So I think the importance of like letting go and keeping going, as we talked about earlier. I love rose quartz as well for working with grief. The gem essence itself, also the stone itself. I found that laying the stone on the area of your heart, near your heart chakra, very, very important, very valuable. You can make your own rose quartz water, by literally just clearing and cleansing a rose quartz, putting it into a vessel where you're going to hold the water and adding water to that vessel. You're getting the essence of the rose quartz in that water. So that's a really great stone to work with. Really quickly, because I know I've been long in the tooth with this one, but remember the lungs during this time. And we talked about this in Vibrant last night, and Gemini rules the lungs, and Mario had kind of like whatever was going on kind of settled in his chest, which I thought was kind of interesting just because we've both been kind of going through a process of grieving. So remembering to nourish and take care of your lungs during times of grief and sadness. Ellie Campaign, which is a plant that we talked about last night on Vibrant, but helping to move like stagnation and dampness that can develop in your lungs during times of grief and sadness is really great. There is a lot of sun energy with that plant, so you're bringing in the cheerful, bright energy of the sun as well, and the warmth. That's a really great one to work with. Usnea I wanted to bring up because Usnea not only is a lung remedy, but it really is helpful and stimulating to the immune system. And most people who have gone through grief know that your body can kind of go into shock sometimes, or you need more protection during these times because your immune system can kind of drop or overcompensate. And so usnea would be a really great one. My personal
You
weave.
don't have to completely rush through these if you don't want to, by the way.
Oh, okay. I know, but
You can take your time if you have thoughts about it.
I do have thoughts about usnea in general because what my weave has been with usnea is that usnea is the guardian of the forest ether. And to me, what that means, he is like the guardian of the spirit of the forest. And when you find or see usnea, there's like a grandfather wisdom wizard kind of energy.
Yeah.
And it's known as old man's beard. That's like one of the nicknames for it. And so when you see it, it looks like a beard, or you can hold it up to your chin, and it's kind of funny. That could help with grief as well. But it facilitates deep breathing because you're working with the lungs. And I think taking deep breaths during times of grief and sadness, super crucial. I mean, it's super crucial all the time. But I think taking a moment to stop and breathe and tuning into your breathing, because a lot of times you don't realize if you're having shallow breathing, or you're taking short breaths. You sometimes don't even realize it until you actually stop and then just tune into your breath.
That's why I kind of slowed you down for a second, because I felt like you were kind of just like quickly going over it, almost like a shallow breath sort of thing of just like, just like wanting to speed things up for whatever reason. But it's like you can, like, if there's important things that you want to say, you should totally take your time and talk about it, because I think all of this stuff is really important, and you know a lot about it. So I think it deserves, the appropriate attention, I guess.
Yeah, no, thanks. Because I felt like, I guess.
You've been talking for a little bit, but it's your show too. So
No, totally. I just didn't want to, because I know we share the floor. So that's why I was thinking that.
Right.
Because I know you also have things to say too. So
I'm good. I'm flexible on time. I'm hanging out.
Nice. So yes, the usnea. There's the serenity of the forest, I feel, that is in usnea, the essence of it. Like anybody who's ever been in the forest and feel the quietness of the forest, you hear the sounds of animals or birds or the wind. It's a time where you can really be introspective. And I think that on an essence level, usnea can help you get to that place a little bit more easily. There's a lot of inner wisdom that can be tapped into, and the wisdom of the forest with usnea. And I had one other, what was the other thing? Oh, yes. Helping you to focus a little bit, because when you're going through grief and sorrow and sadness, a lot of times you might feel like you don't have focus, like you're not focusing enough on something, or you're having a hard time focusing. And usnea to me helps one to see the forest through the trees, sort of thing. So if you're getting too caught up in something, it can help you just kind of hone in, bring back, help center you again. And usnea takes a long time to grow, and it grows in places where the air quality is very good.
Right, yeah.
And I always like to talk about that because that's such a cool little tidbit about it. So it's just another like reminder of the air element, the element of air, and the importance of air, and then the importance of air quality, and what can be produced and what can live and thrive when the air is healthy. And usnea is one of them. And I think that's where a lot of the wisdom with usnea, where it comes from, is the length of time it takes to grow. And so that's why too, like when you're harvesting it, I always recommend, and most people recommend, harvesting it after like a windstorm or something where it's fallen. It's like already been fallen, because taking it right from the tree, if you were in like major need of it or something, you could do that. But I think like allowing it to just like grow on the tree or on the wood or whatever and do its thing is quite important. So I always try and find usnea that's fallen on the ground, and that's usually the stuff that I harvest.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
And as long as you clean it up pretty good when you come home,
should be solid.
Should be solid. One last thing, I'll go back to the Ellie campaign, is that Ellie campaign, I said this last night, it always makes me think of friendship, because I was given Ellie campaign plants from a really good friend of ours, and it grows so well. There's like a cheerfulness to that plant.
Mm-hmm.
It's strong and straight. It grows very strong and straight. And so there's like a strength element. And I think that goes along with the sun connection and the strength card. So finding your inner strength, Ellie campaign is great for. And also, it was one of Carl's most near and dear remedies that always worked for him very well. And that I would make him tea of Ellie campaign root a lot of times. And that really, really would always like kind of help him pull through if he was having sort of like a rough patch or whatever.
Right.
Ellie campaign was one that was really great for him. Lastly, I wanted to talk a little bit about dream time for grief and sadness, because I think the dreams that you have during the times of grief and loss and sadness can typically be very potent and can typically help you process things very well. And a lot of times too with dreams, what I've found during tough times is like they really, your subconscious kind of like brings out things in a different way. And so once you dream about something, I always look at it like you're really then processing it on a different level. Like
Right.
you're kind of like going to the next level of something and being able to process it even deeper. And that to me is very, very important. And you know, here I am with mugwort always. Mugwort. Wonderful ally for dream time, not only because it helps you to slip into these states more easily, but I think the reason mugwort helps us so much during dream time is because there's that crone energy wisdom that's coming from it. And then she kind of brings up things that you thought you may have dealt with. And then you might have a dream about something going, oh, wow, okay, I thought that was kind of, you know, dealt with or whatever. And she can sometimes bring stuff up like that. And I think that it's allowing you maybe like a little insight into see something that there might be a little bit more there, a little bit more deeper, that you might want to go a little deeper on this one. But also I think she can help you to bring things to the surface in the subconscious, and as like a final goodbye, you know, allowing that goodbye to happen, or that final, just like the finale or whatever. I know I've heard before a lot of times if you dream of someone who's died, you're like the dream is kind of like it's like the goodbye aspect of it, or like you're really saying goodbye, like in your own subconscious, in your own consciousness.
Oh,
even.
I mean, just the way I look at it is you are more united in dream time than you are in your waking life. That you're the dream realm is part of the spirit realm.
Yeah, it is.
You know, which to me is just like part of the underworld or whatever you want to say. And so it's almost like, so when people say that, oh, I had a dream with my grandpa or whatever, you know, it's just like, well, that was probably literally an aspect of your grandpa or your grandpa, you know, the part of him that still exists, you know, which is more etheric, spiritual sort of thing. And so
Right.
that's where you're going to, you know, in the dream world. That's why the symbolism is really freaking potent, and why it can really throw you off, and why it's so mysterious and all this other kind of stuff, you know. So yeah, no, the dream world is a bridge to the other side.
Yeah, and I think it's even a means for people who have passed to communicate with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so if a relative or a pet or somebody has a message for you from the other side, a lot of times it can come through in a dream, you
Right,
know,
yeah.
and that would be their easiest means to connect with you. But mugwort can help you to kind of get into that liminal space as well. Like if you're
Totally.
not wanting to go to sleep, but you're wanting to connect maybe with a past relative or pet or loved one, taking mugwort or smoking mugwort and meditating can bring you there.
Right.
And the thing that I always love about mugwort is that there's like a strong element of protection that emanates from mugwort. And so when you're working in these more dreamy realms, etheric realms, protection is really important. And so you get kind of like, it's like a dual result with mugwort, being able to tap in, but then also being protected, during the same time.
Right.
Um, and yes, I think that is all I wanted to bring up with mugwort. Yeah, and so that's kind of the that is the extent of my herbs for sure.
That was a pretty bulky list or healthy list.
Yeah, totally.
So there's
and I think
there's a
that's
lot
why
of solutions here.
right. That's kind of why I started feeling self-conscious too, because then I kind of realized, well, I was like in the middle of it, like, oh,
I've done the same thing.
yeah.
I
So
totally
it's
get
like,
it.
oh, this was kind of a bigger one, but
I've done the same thing, which is why I obviously could see it too.
Right.
Just being like, oh, she feels like she has to blast through all this stuff, and you don't.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You got it.
Well, just before we end, I wanted to show a couple books. So this book here is Love is in the Earth, Kaleidoscope of Crystals.
Is this out of print or is it available?
This is out of print. I know the original edition which we have is now, if you find it, if you look this book up online, sometimes it's pretty expensive. But yeah, it's out of print now, but this is like a tome.
So maybe you can find the PDF or something.
You might be able to find a PDF, but you might be able to find a used copy. But yeah, this is wonderful. If you're into stones and crystals and the healing aspects, just turn it on its side so people can kind of see like how big it is. There is so much information packed into this book. She goes through, any stone and crystal you can imagine. It's pretty much in there. It's kind of like a crystal Bible in some sort of sense. She's a little new agey, I'll say. But
it's a crystal book.
Right. But she's also very grounded and practical too in her suggestions and things like that.
Right.
And so I wanted to share this book because I reference this book quite a bit, especially when working with gem and crystal essences or making gem and crystal essences. I typically use this book. She also has a book that we have. It's called The Laying On of the Stones, where she goes through basically crystal therapy by laying the stones on your body.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing I wanted to mention with the rose quartz is, and I did mention it, I believe, but like actually putting it on your heart chakra or getting yourself a pendant of rose quartz or something and wearing it over your heart. Yeah, that's really great. I have shown this book before and talked about it. But the Flower Essence Repertory, this is a wonderful guide as well. There are a lot of plant essences and flower essences in this book, and it's lovely. I reference it quite a bit as well, and I find myself just wanting to read it from time to time just to like brush up on my knowledge of flower essences. In the way that this book is written, they'll like have different types of ailments. So like I opened up to brokenheartedness, I think. I think that's one of them up there. Brokenheartedness. So there you go. That's a weave. So anyway, you can go through it by ailment, but then they also go through it by actual essences. So you could look up lavender, or you can look up bleeding heart, or you can look up broom, and you can go at it from there. So anyway, very great book. So those could be a couple references if you're wanting to dive into the essence side of things, which I always highly recommend for people who are dealing with trauma and grief. Essences, and using tinctures as essences, using tea as essences. Wonderful.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good stuff, bub.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, I needed to. This is part of my healing process by sharing this with everybody. Just wanted to say that too.
Oh, yeah. No, that makes perfect sense.
And that's why I knew I needed to talk about it tonight, because every time I was thinking of a subject, this one just kept,
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it's like, nope, this is the one that needs to be talked about. So,
right.
Hopefully it helps some other people out there.
I bet it will.
Yeah, I think so.
Nice. Well, there's a handful of comments for you. So let me see here. Okay, you read about your dream from Binna.
Yep.
And then, all right, so maybe somewhere around here, because you started talking about grief.
Okay.
And things like that.
Okay. All right. Okay, Binna says grief unaddressed could easily form a breast lump in women. Broken hearts are the root cause. Interesting. That makes so much sense.
I'm just trying to figure out this lighting situation
Yeah,
too.
we look pretty blown out today here.
Yeah.
I wonder what I noticed that when we move around, that's when it sometimes it changes.
Right.
Yes, so that's a good point, Binna, and I believe that could definitely be the case. Either way, let's see. Either way, views blue, blood, red, polar opposite colors. Binna says the iron reacts with oxygen, giving blood its red color. Although veins appear blue through skin, blood is not blue. Okay, cool. Thank you for clearing that up. So that is a good little tidbit. So thank you, Mario, too, for also bringing that to my attention.
I've heard that before too.
Yeah.
So I can't remember where I've heard it or whatever, but to me it's never
resonated.
Yeah, it's never quite resonated. I've always had a hard time even just imagining it. But
yeah, I mean, when you do think about it, it is kind of strange to think that it would just change. But
right.
Yeah. So, let's see. Jessness says flower essences have helped me so much. I've been taking Joshua tree, and last night dreamt of being in the desert, seeing hundreds of Joshua trees. Interesting. I like that. That's awesome. I like thinking about the essence of Joshua tree. That's cool.
Yeah, that is cool. It's a cool tree.
Yeah, I have not spent time with it like at all, but it makes sense you have being from California. Let's see. Usnia is a sexy word to say. Nice.
Usnia.
Usnia. Sarah G, my pup Gas probably has definitely visited me in my dreams the last few months. Very different than just storyline dreaming.
That's awesome.
That is cool. I like that. I just think that there's so much to be said about having visits in dreams. It really there's always a resolution or something that comes to me. Like when I've dreamt of, like when our friend Bud passed away, I remember having a very specific dream with Bud in it. And after that, I feel like I really was able to really like fully process his death and accept it, something more easily. Okay, Benno did find a copy of the Love is in the Earth for $50 US used copy. That's a pretty good price. Mercury Mel says, place stones in the belly button. Amethyst, garnet, and carnelian are my go-tos. Oh, yes. Belly button. That's a good tip, too.
Ooh.
You can put medicine into the belly button, which I've done before. Tinctures, oils. Oils are more gentle if you're working with an alcohol tincture, but yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and
I could see
really goes deep.
Stuff related to mom, because that's where your umbilical cord is.
Right.
So, and then the placenta stuff and all of that. Interesting. I've never thought about that, but that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The person I learned that from is actually Thomas Sheridan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was talking about it, and I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I remember trying it and really liking it, actually.
Right.
Gordy Two Shoes says, thank you. I'm going to listen to the whole thing after. All of this is helpful. Love you guys. Love you too, Gordy. And all right. Looks like we kind of went through those comments, so that's awesome.
Nice.
You need to read my comments about why they say blood is blue. It's from the silver plates and utensils that royalty ate from. Oh, interesting. Oh, yeah, because if you have a silver, and when silver oxygenates, or is that copper? There's a blue color.
She mentions it up there, but maybe you can.
I can look at it after.
Later,
yeah. So that. All right. Cool. Well, that was a good one.
Thank you.
Yeah. Totally. Thank you.
Yeah. Alrighty. So my turn, A.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. So this is an interesting one, and I was excited to do it because I think it makes perfect sense to talk about it right now. But it is, depending on who you're talking to, this one's kind of controversial.
Ooh, nice. I
And
like it.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of controversial. And so I'm going to not mention it's about one specific person.
Okay.
And I am not going to say their name,
Okay.
but I have it printed out that I'm going to show on a piece of paper.
Okay, I like
And
this.
so I'm just trying to not trigger any flags or, I don't want your channel to get like, hurt because of this or whatever.
Oh, that's
So if
nice
you're
of you.
listening to this, I'm going to hold up the name of the person in question, and you should look at the screen so you guys know who I'm talking about. And I'll use their initials,
Okay.
throughout the story or whatever.
Okay.
But besides that, though, I think pretty much everything else I can just openly say, and it'll probably be pretty obvious too. So I don't even know if this is even a precaution that's even necessary or whatever. But I did a quick search on YouTube to see if there's something like directly in line with what I'm going to be talking about with it, the angle I'm going to be talking about with it on YouTube. And all the first thing was like a fact checker thing about how that's false and whatever, how they do that for controversial topics and stuff.
Right.
And then everything else was just Normieville stuff about the topic at hand.
Okay.
But it's very much related to Gemini season 3 years ago,
Okay.
specifically.
Okay.
Which is why I'm bringing it up. So again, I might be like way too paranoid about trying to do this or whatever, but I don't know. I almost feel like a little bit of precaution isn't the worst thing in the world.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, yeah, I think at this point we'll be fine, but yeah, precaution is always okay.
Yeah. So anyways, for better or worse,
Okay.
I'm like, okay, maybe this is a tiny little safeguard or whatever.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. That's cool. But I like that we're going controversial. Dude, nice. That's awesome. You totally would design something and print it and everything.
Okay. So this is who I'm going to be talking about today. So this guy right here. So if you're listening, now is your opportunity to look at the screen so that you know who I'm talking about, because this whole situation is hoaxy as shit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I will just say that my personal opinion is that this was a ritual. And so it's a ritual. And
GF. So we're gonna
GF
refer
is
to him as
who
GF.
I am referring to. And so wow. I mean, so I just almost have to give a couple little like backstory sort of details, I suppose. But over the years, but over the years, I've stopped paying attention to mainstream storylines. I think when people first start getting into, alternative information, conspiracy theories, things like that, I think and it's natural too. But one of the first things people do is like they start seeing it in the news, or they start decoding events, and they start doing stuff like that of Super Bowl halftime shows and like
right.
music videos and things like that and whatever. And I was there. I totally understand where people are coming from with all of that stuff, But just over the years, that became less and less and less of a thing for me. I stopped caring because once some of these events are fake anyway. It's almost just, I think it makes more sense just to assume they're all fake until proven real, basically.
Yeah.
So some people have referred to this as auto hoaxing, and so I stopped paying attention to a lot of these storylines and narratives. I don't pay attention to politics anymore for like some of the same reasons, And so I'm not really caught up in the mainstream sort of storylines that are put out there for propaganda purposes, for conditioning purposes, for programming purposes, all this kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, people know because of Symbolic Studies that I've been following each sign during the sign itself for a number of years now. This year was no different. I was already doing my Symbolic Studies routine or whatever. And so I had learned a lot about Gemini season before the GF situation became a thing. And so the whole situation with him happened during Gemini, right? And so as the story unfolded, it became such a big news story that you almost couldn't ignore it anyway. That it was just like, if you're on the internet, you're going to hear about it pretty much, you
Right,
know?
right.
And so I was seeing the headlines just like everyone else. I was seeing the outrage just like everyone else. I was seeing the developing side stories just like everyone else, you know, kind of in a way. And again, I don't think I was even trying to really pay attention to it. It just was being blasted everywhere, right? But there was a couple of details that I picked up that I noticed that I'm like, huh, damn, that reminds me a lot of Gemini. And I'm like, that's kind of odd. And I didn't really think a whole lot about it. And then another thing would come up, and I'm like, well, fuck, that reminds me of Gemini too. And then before you knew it, it was just like this whole entire stacking up of like synchronicities or coincidences that lined up with Gemini season. And it got to the point where I'm like, well, now I want to know more about what's going on with this. So I started following the storyline and everything else. And then the syncs with Gemini just continued to stack on top of each other to the point where my ultimate conclusion is that this is actually a Gemini ritual, that it was intended to happen during Gemini season. And the storyline encodes so much Gemini, deep esoteric Gemini symbolism that unless you were a nerd for this shit, it's gonna go over your head. But once you understand a few very, very key sort of threads, it makes so much sense. And I've explained this before, I think on Weaving Spiders, like forever ago, you know, and then I think that's it. I think maybe I explained it on Spiders maybe once or twice, but I've never talked about it on my channel, let alone your channel, obviously.
Right.
But there's so much to it that once I lay it all out there for you guys, you're gonna see that this was actually a ritual that encodes Gemini, you know, for whatever reason. And so again, it happened during Gemini season, first and foremost.
Right.
So once again, if you know, you're just seeing this, I'm being paranoid, and I'm not, just for the sake of YouTube censorship. If we were on some other platform that didn't care,
Right.
you know, I would have no problem, obviously. But the person in question is this guy right here, who I think might as well just be a pretty much a construct anyway.
I was going to say, I think he's totally made up and
Right.
whatever.
Right. Totally.
Patsy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so his actual involvement, him as a person, all up for debate. I don't know everything about this guy or who they claimed he was or whatever. I just know what I picked up, the information I picked up, and at the time I wrote a list down of all of the synchronicities that I came across, and I'm like, this stuff is just way too much. Like it's over the top. So, the whole situation of when he was detained and then supposedly killed was during Gemini season. So May 25th, excuse me, 2020.
Okay.
So this was already, COVID was already a thing. Okay, so COVID was already a thing, and even when you look at like photos and videos of it, one of the cops is wearing a mask. You know, so people were already starting to wear masks, just to kind of rewind time a little bit.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
And so the whole entire situation was that supposedly he used a counterfeit $20 bill, I think, to buy cigarettes, and he was arrested, detained, and then one of the cops was kneeling on his neck for, they say, 9 minutes or whatever, and that at one point he was basically saying, I can't breathe, and then eventually he died.
Right.
I think this is all a staged storyline. I don't think that there's much of anything that was really organic with it, personally. You know, there's even, I know that at the time there was photos or video of what looked like kind of like a dummy, you know, at one point being used in this whole entire sort of setup, basically. And there's all sorts of screwy stuff with it that I'm not going to remember.
Right.
But I bet you people who are skeptical, who were following this at the time, probably some people might recall and remember what the hell was going on or whatever. And so It took place during Gemini season, which is generally between like May 21st to June 21st. So May 25th is when it occurred, early in Gemini season. Um, and one of the things that I thought was really interesting at some point was that they kept on saying that he had a really good friend in who was a former NBA player, and that this NBA player was like a twin, that it was like they were like brothers, and they kept on emphasizing this in the news. And the guy's name is Steven Jackson, and either he was a former NBA player or was a current NBA player. I think former though, if I'm not mistaken. And so they put this guy out there in the news that this NBA player was very good friends with GF, and that they were like brothers. And when Steven Jackson was in the news, I saw at least 3 or 4 different news clips of Steven Jackson saying, "Oh man, he was like a brother to me. He was my twin. We were twins. We were inseparable." And he kept on emphasizing that point, and I'm like, dude, what? Like, why? It seemed very inauthentic the way he was saying it, and that was one of the things that reminded me of Gemini season. And so if this is the case, then GF would be the bad twin. You know, he's on the streets, he's using counterfeit $20 bills.
Right.
I think he was in porn as well. That was like a confirmed thing, that
I
he
do
was in
remember
porn,
that. Yeah.
and that he was up to no good, like big time, I think, and kind of like a street guy,
Right.
And so this would mean that GF was the bad twin symbolically, and that Steven Jackson was the good twin. He was successful. He's in the NBA. And of course, if you're an athlete, a professional athlete, or in the NBA,
Oh.
then of course you're basically God,
Right.
or you're an angel, or you're a saint, or whatever the fuck, And so you deserve to be praised, and you deserve to be worshipped, and
And
whatever.
make millions of dollars, and yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, this seems to me like they're putting out this twin or brother narrative. And if people have followed my work and they've heard me talk about Gemini, you'll probably have heard me say that the Lover's card, which is ruled by Gemini, used to be called the Brother's card. Okay.
Okay.
So it used to be called the Brother's card. And we're talking about the Gemini twins, but you're also talking about Cain and Abel. And so you're talking about a good brother and a bad brother. Cain would be the bad brother. Cain kills Abel. And so I felt like they were hamming up this narrative of this twinning sort of thing, or brother sort of thing. And then it just made me realize too, I'm like, well, Freemasons call each other brothers, so if you're in the lodge system, your fellow lodge mates they're your brothers, basically. And so there's this whole entire dynamic of Freemasonic brethren, and them referring to each other as brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wasn't surprised to see that GF's father was a Freemason / is a Freemason, and that there were photos of his father wearing Freemasonic regalia, so like confirmed 100% Freemason. So he comes from a Freemasonic family, and I've said this before too, but there's a lot of symbolism relating Gemini to Freemasonry. And so with Gemini, you have the twin pillars, which you're going to see at the Freemasonic Lodge.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like a million other connections that I could get into, but Gemini and Freemasonic symbolism, man, there is so much overlap that it's kind of inseparable in a lot of ways. One of the aspects with all of this stuff that I've been talking about lately is that in ancient Babylon, the time of Gemini season was called the brick mold, because this is when they would resume baking bricks outside because the sun was fully out. And so they would bake bricks outside, and then they would resume building projects. And so when you're talking about bricks, you're talking about masonry, right?
Right.
And so this is why in a lot of older sun cards, you're going to see two boys, you're going to see two brothers or twins in front of a brick wall, in front of the sun, basically. And this is also why Romulus and Remus, the hero twins of Rome, this is where we get Rome from Romulus. They're credited for building the first brick wall in Rome. And so bricks and building walls relates to Gemini. It sounds so weird. When I first learned all this stuff, I was like, it took me a while to wrap my head around it. But all you have to do is look at some of the comparative myths. And all you have to do is start looking around and start realizing, like, oh, there's actually a number of twins who are credited for building or for founding a city, like the main central city of a given region or of a people, and then oftentimes they're credited for building this first wall, using bricks. And so even Romulus and Remus, Romulus, where we get Rome from, he killed Remus. So Rome is named after the evil twin. I mean, it's just one of these things where I'm like, isn't that kind of interesting just in and of itself?
Right.
So Rome is named after the evil twin of Roman mythology, basically. Again, associated with bricks, building this brick wall, et cetera, et cetera. But this is an old thing, and it goes back to Gemini season, this brick mold concept. And so I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Well, I already knew that when this whole entire thing happened, and I was already thinking about the symbolism when all of this was going down. And I was like, it was like very interesting to see all of these things pile up. GF grew up in the projects.
Oh, okay. Yes, I remember this part.
Guess what his project building was called, or his little project neighborhood?
Well, it the bricks or something?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I remember this.
It was called the Bricks. Okay.
Right.
So it was called the Bricks. And I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. I'm like, that makes sense. I could see why a housing project would be called the Bricks.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And then also, bricks also relates to dealing drugs and the fact that
oh yeah, bricks of
cocaine or whatever,
right? Whatever it is.
So and so I think that kind of is related as well, But he grew up in a housing project called the Bricks. And then guess what his crew name was of the people he rolled with? Do you remember?
I think I do. The bricklayers?
The Brick Boys.
The Brick Boys. Okay. I knew it was something with bricks.
And so literally GF has a hat that I wish I could find it on my computer, but I saved it. There was a photo circulating of him going around and he's wearing a hat. And you know how people do custom airbrush on hats and shirts and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Which is like one of my favorite styles of all time.
I was going to say, we love that airbrush style.
But he was wearing a hat that said the Brick Boys.
I remember that. I remember that photo when you showed it to me.
So this could mean several things. It can mean the drug stuff, right?
Yep.
Selling bricks, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then it could also represent the bricks as well of this housing project.
I was going to say, yeah, right. He has a crew in the bricks.
Right. So, but symbolically, Freemasons, Masons, Masonry, working with bricks and stone. They're also symbolically brick boys as well, if you want to put it that way. And so I'm like, that's kind of interesting too, right? And so I just want to make sure that I'm kind of getting all of the shit in here, which it looks like I am. And so this all happened in, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Okay. Minneapolis is one of the twin cities as well. More Gemini symbolism. It's the twin city to St. Paul. And so I'm like, wait a second. There's also like twin symbolism built into just like where this all like happened at and everything else.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, all of this stuff seems very orchestrated. And then the whole thing too, just to kind of rewind for a second, the whole thing about I can't breathe. This is right after COVID became a thing.
Right.
And right after people started wearing masks.
Right. Yeah.
And then also Gemini relates both to the arms, but also to the lungs. I can't breathe. That became like the slogan. That became like the mantra. I can't breathe.
Yeah, and that was all the protests that happened. They were like chanting this and having signs and the whole thing. And okay, so I just had a thought, but you should just keep going because maybe it'll come back to me. But it had to do with the breathing and the lungs. Oh, well, how did a lot of people supposedly die from this mysterious virus? Ventilators. Being put on a ventilator and their
exactly.
lungs literally exploded.
Right.
And they were like
Exactly.
all that stuff. So yeah,
Exactly.
no, this is such a good weave because this was the initiatory ritual to like even just bring the vid further
Right.
into its process, I think. And
100%.
it happening in Gemini, it being a gateway. You know, this was more of like a gateway ritual. And they knew what they were doing with this whole thing. And so, yeah, this is such a good one.
So I just see Gabe is around.
Oh,
and
sweet.
I'm sure you're picking it up, dude, but I'm being paranoid. And so this is who I'm talking about. And I'm talking about this ritual through the lens of Gemini and all of the Gemini symbolism that basically was encoded in everything. It happened during Gemini, all that kind of stuff. I think we probably have even talked about it. That would not surprise me at all.
Well, like you said, it was brought up on Spiders. That was one of the things that you did when you were on Spiders, either the first or second time. I'm pretty sure you
brought up this information.
Brought this up, yeah.
Okay, so you have all of these different things, right? And then I'm making the case that brick symbolism, it relates to Freemasonry, it relates to twins, it relates to Gemini season, it relates to all of this stuff. It all comes to a head, in my opinion, in the Sun card, which is hence the brick wall that you see behind the two boys, behind the twins, right? And so just like what you said, so there was all of these protests popping off. And so I was already coming up with all these connections. I was already thinking about all of the Gemini twin symbolism with all of this stuff. Also, the fact that Gemini has a lot to do with conflict, and it has to do with two units, two factions, two armies, arms, just like we talked about last night and Gabe brought up the Second Amendment to bear arms, the right to bear arms.
Right.
There's a relationship with the arms in Gemini. Just kind of like sometimes, what's the saying? One hand doing something, the other hand, what is it? I always get it confused.
Like behind your back or something? Or?
No, it's something. It's like the left hand doing something the right hand is unaware of, sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
I'm totally butchering it. That's
Sorry.
not. That's
yeah,
not.
I don't remember. But
someone here knows it. I promise.
Probably.
But but the left hand path versus the right hand path. All that kind of stuff, right? And so the duality of your hands, like your arms and your body being a polarity sort of spectrum kind of thing from top down, but also from left to right.
Mm-hmm.
So the good angel and the bad angel, or the devil and the angel, on your shoulder sort of thing.
Right.
And so anyways, so black versus white, right? That was one of the whole entire things, is that the cop was white, GF is black.
Right.
And so it's the race war sort of propaganda thing that they've always pushed down our throats, that they've always wanted to pop off. They've always wanted a civil war, and race is one of the things that they've used as one of the ways to make that happen.
Right.
This civil war. So this infighting, right? And that's what the twin symbolism is about. It's like infighting. It's two brothers. You would think that they would be on the same side because they're brothers. But whenever there's like a spark or a heat between two people, whether they be twins or lovers or whatever, that can come to a head.
Yeah.
That can come to a head. And that's what Civil War stuff is all about. And since we're on the topic, just very quickly, it appears to me as though the whole entire action of a civil war also might be an old ritual. One of the books that I read last year, At the Center of the Earth, this guy talks about this old ritual kings used to perform on their countries, and it was to divide the country in half, either north and south or east and west, and then literally pit the two factions against each other.
Damn. And that's totally what happened with all of this.
Exactly. And so, but even think about the literal Civil War, North and South.
Right.
Or think about all the countries that have like an East-West conflict and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
This is an ancient...
East Coast, West Coast.
Yeah, exactly. This is totally an ancient sort of thing. Hip-hop did it.
That's why I was just saying East Coast, West
Oh,
Coast.
you were
Tupac and Snoop. That was like the big thing.
Right.
Tupac is East Coast and Snoop is West Coast, and that they were like literally rivals all the time.
I think
Isn't that right?
You're thinking of Tupac Biggie, right? Because Tupac and Snoop are both West Coast, pretty sure.
Okay, sorry.
So,
but yeah, Biggie is he the East Coast guy?
Yeah, Biggie's New York.
Okay, sorry. I knew it was a hip hop thing.
Yeah.
Hippity hoppity.
And so, anyway, so this appears to be an old ritual in and of itself. Divide the country, pit the different sides against each other, literally divide it physically. So there's regional differences, or symbolically do it. Black versus white, whatever, conservative, Democrat, whatever. So I was already paying attention to all this stuff. And then, thank you.
Yeah.
BLM existed before this, but man, they got a lot of momentum.
Yeah, it popped off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of momentum with this one. And so I was blown away that one of the final cherries on top with all of this stuff was when there were nationwide protests for GF, for justice for GF. Say his name.
Oh, that was part of it. I was thinking about it and I'm like, yep.
Say his name. I can't breathe. Blah, 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 all this stuff.
Say their names.
Say their names, yeah, and then it became a whole entire thing.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
You had people writing all these names on their cars and driving around and virtue signaling. And
there were orchestrated protests to begin on a certain day or a weekend, and there were pallets of bricks mysteriously showing up all over the country in major cities.
Right. What are the odds of that?
And these bricks were used to destroy businesses.
Yep.
Break car windows, destroy public and private property.
Injure people.
Hurt people. Exactly. And I was like, oh, dude, 100%. This is exactly what I'm decoding right now.
Yeah. No, you hit it, man.
So to me, all of that stuff combined is symbolic of a whatever Freemasonic Gemini ritual during Gemini season, and I'm not this type of guy, by the way, where I would say that there's maybe 3 or 4 sort of storylines like this that I've picked up that line up perfectly with the sign that the actual event is in. And so I'm not somebody who claims August 1st, stay indoors or do this or do that or whatever, because something's going to happen. Something's going to pop off. In fact, I kind of hate that kind of stuff.
Right.
When people are predicting events and people are predicting catastrophes and people are trying to project what's going to happen around the corner. I think it's a lot of fear porn. And I think it's a lot of I don't know, doomsday sort of propaganda, and it gets a lot of clicks.
Yeah, and it's avoidance of self.
It's avoidance of self. A lot of people love that kind of stuff, though.
Yeah.
And I understand. I think that it makes sense to be interested in that kind of material for a while, but I think that it's kind of like a stepping stone. I think you should grow out of it at a certain point.
Yeah.
And so I don't even really pay attention to that kind of stuff because it's just not really my cup of tea or whatever. But what I will pay attention to is when something like this happens and it's already lining up with things, and then I can kind of see, because there's evidence of oh shit, I think this is actually a ritual,
right?
And it was one that you really couldn't see coming.
No,
you know what I mean? And
right.
So that's how these things kind of happen. Is people want to be able to predict these things, and generally it does not pan out. And I think that's one of the flaws too, is that people get all excited about whatever, some Phoenix ritual or some fucking whatever thing. And I've seen it happen so many times where people get all excited and like, oh, hey, did you know I'm hearing, yeah, July 23rd or something, like something crazy is going to happen in whatever city, and then the day comes and goes. And then nobody revisits the fact that they were all excited for this thing to happen, and then it never happened.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
No,
that's like a
totally.
whole nother topic in and of itself.
It is, but we could do like a whole segment on last Thursday talking about that, even because
Right.
it does. It's one of the things too that is a pet peeve. Because then, sorry, not to sidetrack too much, but if you ever try and bring that up to a person that was harping on one of these events, and we've talked about this before, they are not having it. Like if you were to say, "Oh, you were talking about something happening on June whatever, and it didn't happen. Have you thought about that?" Oh, well, then this happened instead, or they actually changed it and said that this is going to happen then, or whatever. It's like they are unable, usually, to admit that they promoted something that was false or that had really didn't hold water, and that there was really no evidence for it to happen, and they actually just were, guessing, basically.
Right.
So there's no accountability for it. That's the other thing too.
Right.
I think that's the avoidance of self too. Like avoiding that, like you may have fallen for something.
Right.
know?
Right. Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah. Anyway.
So that's pretty much most of it. Is just wanted to bring it up because we're in Gemini season. It's 3 years. It seems longer, actually, doesn't it? 3 years ago. To me, it seems longer. But maybe just a lot has happened since then. A lot has happened on the world stage and, with all this stuff.
Right.
So, but I think that there was a deliberate encoding of Gemini symbolism in that whole entire event and other events kind of surrounding the main event. And funny enough, it has to do with this brick mold connection and bricks.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too, brick symbolism, it's a building block, but yet it can also be used to destroy. So I think that's one of the inversions too behind it, is that it can build a city up. You can build buildings with it. You know what I mean? You can build skyscrapers or whatever, but you can build pyramids, but it can also be used to destroy property and it can be used to kill people and all this other kind of stuff.
Right.
So, and obviously we just know now too, people who pay attention to this stuff, we know what these riots are all about. We know that there's hidden agendas. We know about agent provocateurs. We know about all this kind of stuff now. And so, yeah. So anyways,
Yeah.
so that's my weave, but let me go over my notes to make sure that I got everything, which I think I did. That's the bulk of it. So I think you guys probably see what's going on.
Yeah, this is a good one. I'm glad you brought this one out. And it's, very timely with Gemini. That's great.
Right. All right. So that's what I got, guys. So let me see what the comments are looking like here. All right. Yeah, I was actually going to mention that too. Parker Flowers is saying, recall him having a tattoo of the Masonic double-headed eagle as well. And so he has that on his chest.
Oh,
It looks like a
God.
double-headed eagle. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So that definitely fits with everything as well, for sure. And let's see here.
To me, the such an obvious weave is the the mask, the I can't breathe,
Right.
all that stuff. Like when that started flying around, to me that was just very, very clear. And most people who are listening, and us included, know that that was also a psyop, and also, thought out, planned out. You don't do something as big as they did with shutdowns and all these things without planning it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Nice. Gotcha.
Yeah, I think I like what Justness said, and I know or I can't say she or he, sorry. But saying that the prediction thing, it stifles creativity or stops people from creating. I think that's a really good point, because I think that is part of the thing. It literally takes people out of the moment. and puts them in to the present, and which then puts them into a state of anxiety because then they're projecting that something's going to happen instead of being present enough to be clear-headed, to be able to even be ready for something.
Oh shit, that's right, dude. Yeah, we talked about this, Gabe. So, right.
Wow, that's seriously awesome, Gabe.
Yeah. So, we rarely try and share our screens here, but Gabe shared this, or maybe should I try and link it? You think, or what do you think, babe?
I don't know what would be better. Maybe try and screen share, and if it doesn't work, do the link because that's a really good one.
Yeah, Gabe decoded this when we talked about it, so hopefully you guys can see this image here. And so this is one of the alternative magician cards in the Thoth deck, and you see that the magician is kneeling on this ape down below. And Mercury corresponds with this card, and Mercury corresponds with Gemini. And so Gabe was picking up the symbolism of the whole kneeling aspect, and Gabe could go off on this, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And so I know some aspects of what he's talking about is kind of coming back, more so the conversation.
Wow.
That we discussed this is kind of coming back or whatever, but obviously the implications are kind of obvious.
Yeah, big time.
And then I'm not really a Star Wars guy, so I'm not really sure what's going on over there. But I mean, obviously Chewbacca being ape-like and then kneeling right here, and the whole kneeling symbolism is a big part of all this stuff too, as well. And there's other storylines involving kneeling and whatnot.
Oh, and then wasn't there all that stuff with the NFL at that time where they were taking a knee or some crap?
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully you guys can see that okay.
Wow. I hope they can see it too, because that's pretty spot on.
Right.
Interesting.
So there's a number of angles here of the psyope sort of nature, which really, I mean, I know for this crew or whatever shouldn't be that surprising, but every single Gemini season since it's happened, I always think about it.
Yeah, you can't not, I guess. It's a pretty good one.
Right. So anyway, so that's what's up.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Totally.
I like that you how you designed his name and everything.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's pretty good.
Totally.
You look good.
Totally.
Yeah.
Awesome, dudes.
Nice.
Well, you want to put a bow on this one?
Yeah, we do have our shout out segment.
Oh shit, that's right.
Yeah.
I should be following our little list we have here.
It's okay.
Put a bow on it. By that I mean get to our last little section here.
Yeah, there you go. So our section that we added is we're going to do a shout out of somebody that we appreciate, whether it's a researcher, a friend, somebody we want to introduce you guys to, someone we find has value that, has things to share, which I would think we all have value and all have things to share. But tonight we are going to shout out a woman whose name is Corinne Boyer. I talk about her quite often. I shouted her out last night on Vibrant. But this woman is an herbalist. She is I don't know if she calls herself a witch. I'm not sure how she classifies herself, but she's a medicine woman. She is open to the left-hand path of things, which I really appreciate about her because she's not afraid to go into the darker spaces and the darker aspects of plants and nature and just like the rhythms of the world and how things work. She works a lot with poison plants, which is one of the things that I really like about her. In this book here, Plants of the Devil, that is her main book that she focuses on the poison plants.
I could be spacing. Did you say her name yet?
Yeah, Corinne Boyer.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And so she is located also in the Pacific Northwest. So she lives in Washington. She has classes that she teaches. She does apprenticeships. Mario has seen her speak in Portland. And I just absolutely love all of her research. I love where she goes with things. I love how she breaks things down. And she's just one of my favorite herbalists of all time and medicine women. And I hope to one time or one day be able to actually apprentice with her or take a class or something, because she doesn't live too far away.
And you tried to interview her.
I did reach out for an interview, and she's a very busy woman, especially in the summer, but she did tell me to reach back out later in the year, and that she would be open to having an interview, and I would be over the moon to talk to her.
Right.
And so the other book that Mario was holding up is Under the Witching Tree, which in my opinion, that is my favorite book. I like Under the Witching Tree so much because it's all about trees. It's all about the folklore of trees, the medicine of trees, the traditions of trees, how they can be used as charms, like I said, as medicine, as amulets, as protective forces. She goes through a lot of native traditions and folklore with trees. The other great thing about this book is that she shares a lot of recipes in here. So she talks and a lot of her own personal practices with trees and how she works with them. And so she basically has recipes on how to make wines and how to make using animal fats for salves, how to make mead, how to make did I say wine already? I think
believe so,
yeah. But she has all sorts of things: fruit cordials, elixirs, fumigations. She goes into it, and it's really great. So I highly recommend this book. She has I think she has 2 or 3 more books, but her most recent book that I do not have yet, but I really, really, really want to purchase, is she just released it. I think it was either late last year or early this year, Dream Divination Plants in the Northern European Tradition.
Oh,
that is her newest
wow.
book. And you can get that online. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on that site called Goodreads. But I will shout out another place that you can buy it through Rosarium Blends, which is they're pretty tightly connected. A woman named Katamara Rosarium. She runs Rosarium Blends. Really respect her and appreciate the work she does too. She's an alchemist, creates great perfumes and incenses and all sorts of stuff.
Have you reached out to her?
I have
yet?
not, but I should.
You really should.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
I know they're preparing for a conference right now, but I could
right.
definitely reach out to her and interview her. She'd be
Veritas Janai.
Yeah, Veritas Janai is their conference that they host in Washington. But you can buy her books, Corinne's books. They sell them on Rosarium Blends' website. They have a whole, if you want occult books, like really great occult books, they sell some really awesome titles.
And her husband is he goes by Troll Cunning Forge.
Yes.
Online, and he's a blacksmith.
Yep.
And he makes like occult tools.
Yep.
And so that are like quenched with like, you know, lake water from a very specific lake, and like from a full moon or whatever, some sort of conjunction or alignment or whatever.
Yeah.
Like they're a really interesting couple.
They're very interesting, and they're into it. They walk the walk, they talk the talk kind of thing. Like they're into all this stuff, but they're like living the life of these traditions, and it's really cool. And so I highly recommend checking them out. The other book that Corinne has, and one of the things I have to say too with Troll Cunning Forge, he uses Rosarium Blends as like perfumes and stuff to quench some of his work too, or he'll use some of her oils and stuff. But Corinne is just good friends with them, and I know that both Katamara and Marcus have like edited her books and been a part of helping her to get her books out and stuff. Mm-hmm. And the other book that she has is called The Witch's Cabinet: Plant Lore, Sorcery, and Folk Tradition. I don't have that one either, but those are 2 that are on my wish list for books. And yeah, they're really great. Great community there. And Mario, what was the conference that you saw her speak at? I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, so it was called Flambeau Noir. So it's interesting. So I just posted a link to the Rosarium Blends website, and then I'll find Troll Cunning Forge's Instagram or something.
Yeah, he's on Instagram. I know he's on Etsy. He sells a lot of his stuff on Etsy, actually.
I'll find him on Etsy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll get into that one second. So Troll.
And another place you can buy Corinne's books is our friend Christy at Invoke, who I interviewed a few weeks ago, and she was one of our shout outs a few weeks ago as well. She also sells Corinne's books. She also sells Rosarian blends and some of Troll Cunning Forge's works as well. So you could also go to Invoke if you wanted to support Christy, because she supplies all of that stuff on her website as well. But yeah, I've been able to talk to Katamara a few times. Like she used to have a booth at the Tarot Symposium in Portland, and so those were some of the times where I was actually able to connect with her and pick her brain just a little bit. But I've always just been really drawn to her and what she does, and I just really love what
they're interesting.
What she creates. They're very interesting, and they're very knowledgeable. And they know a lot. They know a lot in particular about hoodoo. I know that's like one of their big things. So they have a lot of books on hoodoo magic and traditions. And
so I just saw on Etsy, but Troll Cunning Forge, he calls himself an occult blacksmith, which is really what he is.
Yeah, that is what he is.
You know, so he makes ritual tools and things like that. So he's always up to something.
Yeah, I highly recommend following him on Instagram if you're on Instagram, because he's pretty active on there, and he's just always, even just the videos he produces of the tools he's making, it's just, and I'll say, after following him for about 3 or 4 years, he has just like, his work just continues to like just
developing it better,
developed and refined. And even when I first started, following him, his work was awesome. But it's just always cool to see someone progress, and see them step up their game as you're following them, and his tools are just always like very striking and stunning.
Totally,
for sure.
Yeah. So I saw Corinne Boyer at a event in Portland, and the event in the past used to be called Flambeau Noir, and it's a left-hand path conference, and I had, and pretty like I don't know, for the lack of a better word, I guess, pretty underground, very small audience, but very interesting speakers. And I'm a curious person, so I'm like, okay, these guys are going to talk about like, witchcraft stuff and left-hand path topics and whatever. And I had seen some of their other lineups of guests in the past, and I was like, oh man, if I would have known about it,
right,
it was underneath my radar. I wasn't following the right accounts or the right people or whatever. So there's a few events that had happened that I was unaware of. And then for whatever reason, they decided to rename this specific event, and they called it Black Flame PDX.
I remember. Okay, now I remember.
And
that.
so the Black Flame is like a concept in some left-hand path circles. And in my understanding is that it's very similar to the concept of like a black sun or like a black light, pretty much. This like sacred center sort of idea, I think. I think a lot of different groups, no matter how spooky they want to be or whatever cultural spin they want to put on it, I think a lot of groups are kind of talking about a lot of the same stuff, but it's just about bridging the gap with language and stuff about like, okay, well, I've said this before, this is my classic example, but it's like one group might call the force Vril, another group might call it voodoo, another group might call it Satan, another group might call it, spirit or ether or whatever,
right.
So to me, it's just kind of like, I think there's actually more similarities than not between certain types of groups. I wouldn't just say universally between all of them, but I think a lot of times it's like a linguistic sort of thing. I think it's a language thing of being like, oh yeah, this group over here, they're just using this word for what you guys are calling this over here,
right.
Sort of thing. So anyway, so she gave a presentation at Black Flame, and it was a really cool event. It was very, very interesting. I kind of felt a little bit out of my element because I didn't know what to expect, because that's not my scene. I don't hang out with people like that, but I'm interested in the material.
Right.
But there were some like kind of, in my opinion, for this subject matter, for what I'm exposed to, there were like some heavy hitters there.
Right.
So there's this guy named Michael Ford. He's written many books on like vampirism and like demonology and like left-hand path type stuff and like I'm trying to think of other topics, but just a lot of things that kind of fall underneath that umbrella. And so he's a well-known name, so I got to see him speak. This guy named Diabolus Rex, who's a local, I don't even know what he would call himself, to be honest, but he looks like a maniac, but he's a very, very interesting guy. He might be somebody that I talk about at some point.
Yeah, he'd be a good one. I wonder if he would even be open to an interview with you.
I think I should interview him.
Yeah, you should. He's interesting. I've seen him in Portland. Like he'll just be walking around. He lives in a certain part of town, and there's a certain grocery store / butcher shop that I like to go to every once in a while in Portland. And almost every time I go there, he is walking around. I've seen him in the grocery store, or he has I think it was a German Shepherd or something that he used to walk around with. And then our friend Bud knew him as an acquaintance, but there was that connection too.
Yeah. So this guy, he has like these like, it almost like his like horn implants underneath his skin.
Yep.
And then he dresses like he's like a vampire or something.
Yeah,
or
like he's kind of there's like an industrial sort of like energy about him.
Yeah, totally. But he's very interesting. He also works with metal. He's a welder. And so his whole entire project is creating this sarcophagus machine thing called the Ragnarok machine, the Ragnarok engine. And it's this whole entire thing, but it's a black magical occult device. It's really wild. I really should interview him because I've always wanted to talk to him. And so he spoke there as well, and there was other people that I had never heard of before that spoke, but Corinne Boyer, she talked about I think she talked about, because I asked you today if you remember, and am I right that, because for some reason her presentation is a little fuzzy, but she was talking about how she is someone that collects a lot of was it bones and stuff?
Well, it's things from graveyards.
Oh, okay.
So she'll like go, because this is where you learned about collecting the dirt from a gravesite.
Right.
And how you can work with the energy of like an ancestor or what have you.
Right.
By taking some of the dirt from their gravesite. Or, the classic thing I know that a lot of people do is you take rubbings of like a headstone or something like that. But she was talking about, either collecting bones or, maybe there's a tree or something near a grave that you're working with, and having that. But one of the things I remember about what you told me was that she had collected so many things over the years. And she had a friend of hers that came over to her house that's more sensitive or an intuitive, whatever you want to say, can pick up on energy well, and told her and she was going through like a hard time or something.
Right. Yeah. Okay. It's
there was something that was like blocking her, and the person had come over and they were looking at all of the things that she had collected, and they were like, you need to get rid of this stuff. Like, this is weighing you down. There's so much
to it.
Yeah. You're corded to all of these things relating to these people that have passed over to the other side, and like it is time for you to let go of this stuff. And so I remember you telling me that story that she relayed.
It was more of a cautionary sort of presentation of being like, hey, yeah, it's cool to have spooky things or to have things that are meaningful or potent or that you got from a graveyard, but you also have to realize that there's consequences and there's a real dynamic with this stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's not just aesthetic, it's not just whatever. And so you have to be cautious. You have to be smart when you're doing this type of work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she had a really level-headed approach, but she learned a lesson with all that stuff.
Right. No, totally. And that's one of the reasons why I like her so much, is because she can go into these spaces, but she's very practical, very grounded. Even the way she writes is very grounded and practical. And she has a way of just displaying this information in such a nice, graceful way that it's easy to read as well. And you learn a lot. She packs a lot in a short chapter on, say, the elder tree or whatever.
Right.
And so I actually quote her even in our elder video, because she was the one that actually brought to my attention elder being useful for bringing up things that might be hidden within, of like the elder is going to show you things. So anyway, yeah. Go
So
ahead.
also just saying at Black Flame PDX, Katamara Rosarium had her booth there.
Yeah.
So, and we've met her before
Yeah.
several times, but
Yeah.
Katamara had her booth there. She did a ritual, which I did not participate in,
Right.
but it was interesting. I'll get to that in a second. And then also Troll Cunning Forge, Marcus, he had a booth there too. And then I don't know if he spoke though, actually. He should have if he didn't, but anyway, so they're affiliated obviously with this little scene sort of thing.
Yeah.
But the ritual, so it was really interesting. So they did a public ritual for Hecate.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
And one of the things that they were talking about, and again, I do not participate in other people's rituals. I try not to at all. So if somebody, because there's different groups and meetups and whatever, and they're like, oh, let's do a prayer together, or let's do a ritual, or let's do a meditation together, this and that, whatever. Personally, I would rather not. So unless you really know the person or you really trust them or whatever, you like their style, go for it. If it's your thing, if you're feeling called, it's all on you. That's not my thing. And so they did this Hecate ritual, and I went to the back of the room. And so I went to the back of the room, and I'm like, you guys can do your thing and whatever. I'm curious just to witness it, I guess. But I'm not going to be chanting with you guys. I'm not going to be reciting this thing and whatever.
Right.
So it was a Hecate ritual. And one of the things that they were talking about, which I was aware of, is that the sound of a dog barking is symbolic of Hecate herself. That there's like no difference with the resonance of a dog barking and the vibration of Hecate, pretty much. Is that they're like one and the same sort of thing, which I've always thought is really, really interesting. But they emphasize this. I think she gave like a presentation before it, and then they did the ritualistic aspect of it. And at one point in the middle of the ritual, when there was like some a moment of silence, someone had a dog there and they started barking. It was like it was ominous, perfect timing. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Or I'm just like, wow, what are the odds?
They summoned her.
They totally did.
Yeah.
That was kind of wild, actually. So anyway, that's one of the things I remember from the event.
Damn. Yeah. Whoa. That's a good memory there.
Yeah.
Or a good story to share.
Totally. I learned a lot. I thought it was an interesting thing. If it happened again, I would totally go again.
Yeah, I could see why.
So, with all of that said.
Yeah. So that's our shout out. And it came along with a shout out for a couple other people, which I'm not surprised actually, because when I think of Corinne Boyer, I think of Katamara and I think of her husband or partner or whatever they call each other. But yeah,
right,
because they kind of are just swimming in the same pool of information.
Let's see what's going on in the chat here.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so Benna bought one of the books that you mentioned.
Oh, sweet.
Oh, I don't know what book, but
I just bought that book. I was scrolling on Amazon looking for cast iron pots to kind of figure out, and then scrolling for the Devil's book. Oh, Plants of the Devil. I bet she bought.
Gotcha. Slick Dissident, approving thumb, erect at some point for something.
Nice.
My Cherie is down to help channel her to you. That's cool.
Oh, nice.
And Ben is saying, wow, the tools sound amazing. Yeah, they are. I mean, it depends on your sensibilities and style with what you like to have around and stuff.
He's just a very talented blacksmith at the end of the day. I mean, that's kind of...
Okay, yeah, Gordy already knows, I think, who he is. Okay. All right. I think that'll do it.
Diabolus Rex hangs out by Butcher. Nah.
I don't get that.
Well, I wonder if because you were talking like he's kind of like the dark energy. He has horns in his head, and
He's a. I think it's interesting.
I think he's a vegetarian.
He's a hardcore vegetarian.
Yeah, so it is funny though that he goes there because it's like they have some of the best like meats, sausages selections in the city of Portland, in my opinion. So it is funny that he goes there. But they're also a grocery store where you can get.
Oh, sorry, I totally missed something that you mentioned. Then.
Oh, because I was talking. It's called Sheridan Fruit Company, is what it's called. But they have, just some of the best selections.
Right. Gotcha. Cool. Awesome, guys. Thanks for hanging out and for being here. As always, we will be back next Thursday. But before we get going here are some final slides.
Yeah.
So thank you once again to all of our patrons. You guys are awesome. You're very much appreciated.
Making the wheels continue to turn, helping the wheels continue to turn, I should say.
For sure. And if you guys are interested in anything Michelle has to offer, whether they be consultations or, products or whatever, you can reach out to her at michelleshealinghome at gmail.com, michelleshealinghome.com, or you can text or call her at 503-568-1569. Your latest newsletter released when you were out of town over the weekend.
Yes.
And then the next one will be out on the 3rd.
Yep.
So I encourage people just to sign up for the newsletter. It really goes, I don't know. It's the best way to understand kind of what's going on.
It really
with your shop
is.
and stuff.
And I only send out one email a month. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to bombard you with a bunch of emails. It's just one time a month at the full moon. If you're into wanting to know what's going on, what products I have, any updates, it's always all in the newsletter. So it is the best way to know that kind of stuff.
Yes, indeed. And then once again, patreon.com/thehealinghome. If you're interested in joining us there next week, you're talking to Nicole.
Yeah, Nicole Mesa, George Mesa of the Third Eye Edify podcast. It's his wife, actually. So I'm going to have her on next week, June 13th at 4 p.m. She is a midwife and a doula, and I have the sense that she has a lot of other things that she's going to want to talk about. It's going to be fun. And we are definitely going to focus on birth, but I think talking to her, we're also going to focus on death and the connection between the two. We'll hear her story and find out more about her. So join us next week on Tuesday.
Excellent. And then you released new shampoo bars and soap bars.
Yeah, so this month's offering is my soap and shampoo bars, and I've got a mugwort earth hag soap, which I am smitten for. That is a new bar, actually, and it really exceeded my expectations. That was the bar that I brought home with me, plus my shampoo bar, but that was the soap I used the whole time I was home, and I'm just like, damn, this one's good. There's some black walnut husk in there, or the powder, black walnut, great for exfoliation in soap. But then there's also some really nice properties you could use it for acne, or if you had cuts or scrapes or something. It's a great kind of first aid soap. There's just some wound healing properties with it. Fungal stuff, if you're having anything going on with that, it'd be a lovely soap for somebody suffering from eczema or dermatitis or any kind of skin ailment. Calendula salt soap, lovely for cleansing the body physically, but also energetically. You can really feel that energetic cleansing that comes from the salt. There's a protective aspect of the salt too. And the comfrey nettle and pine shampoo bar, which is wonderful, and lots of people are really liking that and noticing big differences in their hair and scalp after using it.
Nice. And then your current menu?
Yep, current menu is up here, so you can see the the salt soap, mugwort, earth hag soap. And, I have to recount. I might have one more shampoo bar that's available. And that's 13. So the 2 soaps are 11 each and the shampoo bar is 13. So just a heads up on that. But everything else you see up here is available. So you can reach out to me if you're interested in anything.
Already mentioned it. I think we probably were going to put that at the beginning. It's redundant.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's
all good.
Snail mail, P.O. Box 930, Carson, Washington 98610. And then if you're interested in anything that I have going on, you can basically find where I'm at everywhere at symbolicstudies.com. If you're interested in tarot readings or study sessions, you can text me at 503-893-4606. And then you had a show when you were out of town.
Yeah, definitely. And I really encourage people to listen to it if you didn't hear it and you want to know a little bit more about my personal healing journey. And I talk about this in the show, but it's not just one thing that we all heal from. There's multiple things throughout our lives that we're always going to be healing. But I shared some more intimate details about one of the bigger things for me that was like a big clearing moment when I started healing from an event. And so I talk about that there. And, I was going to pre-record this episode, but I ended up going live from my mom's basement because of what happened with Carl. There was no way I was going to be able, I was not emotionally in a place to be able to pre-record. So it actually went really well being live in my mom's basement, and it was really fun. So there's a lot of home energy in that episode. So you can check that out on my YouTube channel if you're interested.
And as we mentioned earlier, there was a Vibrant last night.
Yeah, totally. We did the Gemini Astro Herbs, so that was fun as always. So you can check that out. It is on my channel on YouTube under the live tab, but you can also go over to the Innerverse Podcast YouTube and check it out there if you're wanting to catch up and see what we talked about last night.
Indeed, indeed. All right, guys, that's going to do it. Thank you once again. There we go. And we will see you next week.
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome deal.
All right.
All right. Love you guys.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you so much.
See ya.
Bye.